Madison knew the weather station was hers because Heather pushed its key across the probate table with one finger. The key stopped beside Madison's coffee. Rust had stained the paper tag tied to it. Someone had written Station Cottage in William Hart's square handwriting, then crossed out cottage and written shed beneath it in blue ink. Heather had done that. Madison recognized the careful pressure of her older sister's pen. The three of them sat in a private room behind a bank in Dickinson. Outside, July heat shimmered over the parking lot. Inside, the air conditioner blew hard enough to lift the corner of the inventory sheet. Heather had arranged the papers into 3 neat stacks. Benjamin kept checking messages under the table. Madison had brought nothing but her purse and the old canvas jacket their grandfather had left hanging in his mudroom. William had been dead for nearly a year. It had taken that long to settle the ordinary bills, value the land, close accounts, and decide which parts of his life could be turned into numbers. Heather touched the largest stack. "The farmhouse and the main acreage stay together," she said. That was Grandpa's preference. Madison looked at the page in front of Heather. Her sister's name appeared beside the house, the machine shed, and most of the cropland. "And Benjamin gets the North Fields?" Madison asked. "Plus his portion of the accounts," Heather said. Benjamin finally put his phone away. "The North Fields connect to the parcel I already lease. It makes sense." Madison waited. Heather glanced at the third stack, which contained 4 pages. "You get the observation lot on 116th Avenue Southwest. The weather station," Madison said. "The lot includes the caretaker cottage. It's a cottage when it's on the inventory." Heather's mouth tightened. "It doesn't have reliable plumbing. I'm trying to be accurate." Benjamin reached for the key and turned the tag over. "The instruments might bring $500 as scrap. Maybe more if there's copper in the cabinet." Madison put her hand over the key before he could take it. "I'm not scrapping it." "No one said you had to," Benjamin replied. "I'm telling you what it's worth." Heather leaned back. She was 35, 8 years older than Madison, and had spent most of the past year speaking as if every family decision had already been discussed somewhere else. She called it keeping things moving. Benjamin called it being practical. Madison had stopped naming it because every name sounded childish when spoken in that room. She looked again at the inventory. Heather received the home where they'd spent Christmases. Benjamin received land that produced rent. Both shared the remaining accounts after expenses. Madison received a narrow wind-scoured lot, a cottage with failing pipes, and a weather station whose white paint had gone brown around every bolt. "Did Grandpa explain this?" Madison asked. Heather straightened one paper. "The bequest is specific." "That isn't what I asked." "No," Heather said. "He didn't explain it to me." Benjamin rubbed his jaw. "He probably assumed you'd want it. You were always out there with him." That was the kindest thing either of them had said, and Benjamin didn't mean it kindly. He meant she had been given the sentimental thing because she was the sentimental one. Madison remembered winter mornings beside William when he would knock snow from the gauge with a wooden handle. He never hurried those visits. He checked every wire twice, wrote temperatures in pencil, and made her read the numbers back. "Close enough isn't a reading," he used to say. At 27, Madison could still hear his voice whenever someone rounded a number. She turned to the second page. The station wasn't described as miscellaneous equipment. Each instrument was listed: the anemometer, rain gauge, temperature shield, recorder cabinet, and electronic logger all appeared beside serial numbers. The bequest included the cottage, the equipment, and all station records maintained with or produced by the listed instruments. That last line seemed overly careful for equipment Benjamin considered scrap. "Who added the serial numbers?" Madison asked. "The wording came from Grandpa's signed instructions," Heather said. "When?" "I don't know. You must know when the document was prepared." Heather looked toward the closed door. "Madison, we've been here for over 2 hours. Most of that was you explaining the land you're keeping." Benjamin exhaled through his nose. "Can we not do this?" Madison looked at him. "Do what?" "Make it sound like we took something from you." Heather's fingers stopped on the papers. There it was. The sentence everyone had been walking around. Madison had known the division before entering the bank. She had received copies weeks earlier. Still, seeing the stacks made it physical. Heather had a house key, a land map, and folders thick with account statements. Benjamin had lease papers and acreage records. Madison had a rusted key with her sister's correction tied to it. Heather spoke quietly. "We followed his instructions. You also valued the station at $500. That was the estimate. From whom? A recycler, Benjamin called. Benjamin raised both hands. It was for the inventory. Nobody's forcing you to sell. Heather gave him an irritated look. She had wanted one calm meeting, 3 signatures, and no loose family feelings left on the table. In her mind, the clean division protected them all. The farmhouse needed repairs, the adjacent land sale had to be prepared, and every delay cost money. Madison's hurt felt inconvenient because Heather had already filed it under unavoidable. Madison didn't know that. She only knew her sister had written "shed" over their grandfather's word. Heather pushed a pen toward her. You can have the documents reviewed again. Would that change what each of us gets? No. Then I understand them. She signed. Benjamin's shoulders relaxed. Heather's didn't. Madison signed the equipment receipt last. Beside the weather station description, William's instructions required the recipient to assume maintenance, utility, and access costs. There was no fund attached, no repair allowance. The station came with work. Heather gathered her copies. There's one practical issue, she said. Of course there is. The lot borders the west parcel. I'm preparing that parcel for sale. Madison waited for the rest. The station equipment is close to the boundary. If you decide you don't want it, removal would help. I just said I'm not scrapping it. I heard you. I'm saying we need certainty. You have certainty. I signed. Heather lowered her voice. The tower looks abandoned. Buyers won't love that. It's been there since before you started talking to buyers. Yes, and Grandpa owned both sides then. Benjamin tucked his documents into a leather folder. Give it a month. She'll see what the repairs cost. Madison looked from him to Heather. You already decided I'll fail. No, Benjamin said. I decided rust is rust. Madison picked up the key. Then you won't mind if I keep all of it. Heather stood. Just stay on your side of the survey stakes. The words landed harder than they should have. Madison slid the key into her purse and put on William's jacket, though it was too warm for it. I know where the line is, she said. She left before either of them could soften what had happened. The drive south from Dickinson took less than 20 minutes. Madison kept both hands tight on the steering wheel. Open fields rolled away under a pale sky. The wind pushed dust low across the road, then cleared it just as quickly. She told herself she was only going to inspect the property. She had work the next morning and groceries thawing in her apartment. She didn't have tools, cleaning supplies, or enough cash for a serious repair. She certainly wasn't moving into a cottage that Heather had renamed a shed. Then the station came into view. The tower stood behind a sagging wire fence. Its cups were motionless, though grass bent around the concrete base. The instrument cabinet leaned slightly forward. One side of the rain gauge was streaked with bird droppings. Beyond it sat the caretaker cottage, a low gray building with a narrow porch and a roof patched in 3 different colors. William had once painted the door red. Only a few strips remained near the hinges. Madison parked on the gravel shoulder. Weeds brushed the underside of her car as she turned into the lot. No one had mowed since spring. A wooden survey stake with orange ribbons stood near the western edge. Heather had already marked the boundary. Madison stepped out. Wind pulled her hair across her face and filled the quiet with the dry hiss of grass. The place looked smaller without William in it. She walked first to the station cabinet. The padlock was orange with rust. She tried the key, but it wouldn't enter more than halfway. A faded service label clung to the door. Most of the writing had worn away, but William's initials remained visible under a layer of dust. He had taught Madison to record rainfall there when she was in college. She would read the gauge while he checked the battery. Afterward, they ate cheese sandwiches in the cottage because William claimed weather work made a person hungry, even if all they'd done was stand still. Madison touched the metal cabinet. It was hot from the sun. "What were you doing out here?" she whispered. The station gave no answer. Something loose tapped inside the tower. She moved to the cottage. The key fit that lock, though the door wouldn't open. Its bottom edge had swollen against the frame. Madison pushed once, then harder. The porch board beneath her left foot gave a warning crack. She stepped back. A wasp crawled from a gap above the door. Great. She walked around the cottage. The kitchen window was cloudy, but unbroken. Through it, she saw William's old table, 2 chairs, and a row of empty glass jars on the counter. A yellow raincoat still hung beside the back door. The sight of it stopped her. Heather had cleared the farmhouse months earlier. She'd boxed William's clothes before Madison could decide whether she wanted anything. The raincoat had escaped because nobody considered the cottage part of his real home. Madison tried the back door, locked. Near the foundation, a pipe dripped into the dirt. The ground below it had turned dark and soft. She crouched, found a shut-off handle, and twisted. It didn't move. She pulled William's jacket sleeve over her hand and tried again. The handle shifted with a squeal. The dripping slowed, then stopped. It wasn't much. A pipe had stopped wasting water on a lot everyone else had dismissed. Still, Madison stayed crouched for a moment, listening to the last drops hit the soil. She stood and brushed dirt from her knees. Her phone rang. Heather's name appeared. Madison nearly let it go, then answered. "Did you go out there?" Heather asked. "How would you know?" "I drove past after the bank. You followed me? I used the county road. Don't turn this into something." Madison looked toward the empty road. Heather must have passed while she was behind the cottage. "What do you need?" "I wanted to make sure you saw the survey markers." "I saw them. And the station cabinet needs to stay locked. There may be electrical wiring. I know what's in the cabinet. You knew what was in it years ago." Madison pressed her thumb against the rusted cottage key. Why did Grandpa list every serial number? Silence held for 2 breaths. "I told you. I don't know. You saw the same paperwork I did?" "Yes. Didn't it strike you as strange?" Heather's voice became careful. "Grandpa kept records for everything. That doesn't mean the equipment has value. I didn't ask if it had value." "Then what are you asking?" Madison looked at the station. The tower's metal cups moved a fraction, stopped, then moved again. "I'm asking why you're in such a hurry to get rid of it." Heather didn't answer at once. When she did, she sounded tired. "Because I need the west parcel ready. Because the estate has taken a year. Because I don't want one more thing sitting unfinished. It isn't yours to finish." "No," Heather said. "Now it's yours." The call ended without goodbye. Madison returned to the porch. She searched her car and found a tire iron, a small bottle of hand sanitizer, and a paper napkin. None of it qualified as proper equipment, but the tire iron gave her enough leverage to lift the swollen door slightly while she pushed. The wood groaned. Dust shook loose from the frame. On the 3rd attempt, the door opened 6 inches. Cool, stale air reached her. It smelled of old coffee, damp plaster, and the cedar blocks William kept in drawers. Madison squeezed inside. The main room was dim. A brown water stain spread across one ceiling corner. Mouse droppings lined the baseboard. The refrigerator door stood open, unplugged and empty. William's table remained under the window, with a pencil lying beside a ring left by a coffee mug. A clipboard hung on the wall. Madison crossed the room and lifted it from its nail. The top sheet was a service checklist, yellowed at the edges. Most of the boxes had been marked in William's hand: battery inspected, gauge cleaned, cable housing sealed, clock checked against standard time. At the bottom, beside the words, "Next full service," he had written a date from late December of the year he died. Madison read it twice. The family inventory said the station had been out of operation for years. Heather had repeated that claim whenever Madison asked why no one was maintaining it. Yet William had scheduled another service only days before his death. A drawer in the table held matches, a screwdriver, and a flashlight with corroded batteries. Beneath them sat a small can of penetrating oil. Madison carried it outside. She worked the oil into the station padlock and waited. Wind moved steadily over the lot. The tower cups turned once, then caught. She tried the key again. This time, it slid all the way in. The lock resisted, then opened with a hard click. Madison held it in her palm. She had access now, and no one else had given it to her. She opened the cabinet only far enough to see a row of dusty wires, the edge of a bound register, and one dark electronic display. Then she closed it. Daylight was fading, and William had taught her never to disturb an instrument until she was ready to record exactly what she'd done. She locked the cabinet again and saved the number from the faded service label in her phone. Before leaving, Madison returned to the cottage and set the clipboard on the table beside William's pencil. She wiped one clear space through the dust with her sleeve. Then she wrote tomorrow's date beneath his unfinished service note. By 8 the next morning, she had called the number from the service label twice. The first call went to voicemail. On the second, a man answered over the sound of an engine. "Erickson Instrument Service. I'm calling about the Hart weather station." The engine noise stopped. "William Hart's station?" "Yes." There was a short pause. "Who is this?" "Madison Hart." "His granddaughter?" She looked at the clipboard on her kitchen counter. She'd brought it back to her apartment after taking a picture of where it hung. Yes, this is Luke Erickson. I'm sorry about William. I heard last year, but I didn't know what happened with the station. Neither did I. He seemed to hear more in that answer than she intended. Are you out there now? He asked. No, I'm in town. I've got a soil sensor job north of Manning, then a wind monitor that's throwing bad readings. I could get to 116th late afternoon. How late? 4 if the first job behaves, 6 if it doesn't. What do you charge? A service call is $125. That covers the first hour. Parts and more time are separate. Madison opened her banking app. She had enough savings to cover several months if nothing went wrong. Something always went wrong. Come out, she said. Before I do, who owns the equipment now? I do. All of it? That's what the paperwork says. Bring the paperwork. His bluntness didn't offend her. It was the first question anyone had asked that treated the station as something worth protecting. I'll be there, she said. She had just ended the call when Heather called. Are you working today? Heather asked. Not until this evening. Can you come to the farmhouse? Madison closed her eyes. What happened? Nothing happened. I need help with the cellar shelves. The estate pickup is tomorrow. What estate pickup? The remaining household items. I thought you finished that. I finished the upstairs. There are canning supplies, old files, and 2 broken cabinets downstairs. I can't tell what should go. Madison glanced at the clock. The station manuals might still be in William's desk. If Heather sent the remaining papers away, Madison could lose them. I'll come for an hour. Good. Bring work gloves. Heather hung up before Madison could mention the station. That was how most requests worked between them. Heather named a task. Madison adjusted her day. Benjamin appeared if there was a machine involved, then disappeared before the sweeping. Madison had once believed this made her useful. After William's death, usefulness had been the closest thing to a family position she could find. The farmhouse stood several miles from the station on land that now belonged to Heather. Madison parked beside a rented utility trailer. The front porch had been stripped of William's chair, boot brush, and dented milk can. Heather opened the door before Madison knocked. You're late. It's 9 minutes after 10. I said 10. You said come over. Heather turned and walked toward the kitchen. The gloves are by the cellar door. The kitchen table was covered with flattened boxes. Small paper labels had been arranged in rows. Keep, donate, discard, ask Ben. There was no label with Madison's name. Heather had tied her hair back and changed into old jeans. She looked tired, not triumphant. That almost made the room harder to stand in. Cruelty would have been simpler. Heather was doing what she always did, putting objects in order and expecting people to fit around them. Madison picked up the gloves. Where's Grandpa's desk? In the front room. Did you empty it? The personal papers went through probate. What about manuals? Heather looked at her. What manuals? For the station equipment. I don't remember any. I'm going to check before I help downstairs. The pickup comes at 9 tomorrow. I heard you. The front room smelled of furniture polish. Pale rectangles marked the walls where family photographs had hung. William's roll-top desk stood open and empty, except for paper clips, a dry ink pad, and one envelope containing furniture screws. Madison checked every drawer. What are you looking for exactly? Heather asked from the doorway. Equipment manuals, wiring diagrams, service sheets. Wouldn't those be at the station? Some are. Maybe. Heather folded her arms. You could ask Benjamin. He took a box from this room. What box? I don't know. Farm records. Why did he get farm records without asking? Because he has the North Fields. And I have the station. Yes, Madison. We established that yesterday. Madison turned from the desk. Then why didn't anyone set aside station records for me? Heather stared at her for a moment. You told me to handle things. I told you that after the funeral. You kept telling me. I was sleeping on your couch and forgetting to eat. I didn't know when that permission expired. The answer was sharp, but it wasn't false. Madison remembered sitting at Heather's kitchen island 3 days after William died. Forms had covered the counter. Heather had asked whether Madison wanted to call the utility companies, meet the appraiser, or go through the filing cabinet. Whatever you think, Madison had said. A week later, Heather had asked whether the farmhouse dishes should be divided. Whatever works. When the land valuation came, Madison had looked only at the final page. She had let Heather carry every unpleasant detail, then felt betrayed when the details no longer included her. That didn't make the division fair. It did show Madison where she had gone missing. I should have paid attention sooner, she said. Heather's arms lowered. Yes, she replied. Then, because she couldn't leave a wound untouched, she added, You can't blame me for doing what you wouldn't. Madison took off one glove and set it on the desk. I can blame you for deciding. That meant I didn't care. Heather looked away first. The cellar, she said. There may be more papers down there. They worked without speaking for 20 minutes. The cellar was cool and smelled of concrete dust, potatoes, and the faint sweetness of spilled preserves. Heather sorted jars while Madison moved boxes from beneath the stairs. The first held appliance warranties. The second contained tax booklets. In the third, beneath an electric fence manual, Madison found a blue binder swollen with damp. Hart Cooperative Weather Station was printed on the cover. She sat back on her heels. Inside were equipment booklets, hand-drawn wiring diagrams, and folded instruction sheets. William had written notes in the margins. Most were brief. Replace seal before freeze. Do not trust factory calibration. Call Luke if signal wanders. Madison ran her finger beneath the last note. Heather leaned over her shoulder. Is that what you needed? Some of it. Take it. Madison looked up. Just like that? It belongs with the station. The sentence should have been ordinary. It still loosened something in Madison's chest. She closed the binder. A loose photograph slid onto the floor. William stood beside the instrument tower in a heavy coat. A younger Luke held a wrench near the rain gauge. They weren't facing the camera. William was pointing at a cable while Luke watched. On the back, William had written only, Spring Service. Luke caught the grounding fault. Madison held the picture toward Heather. Do you know him? Heather shook her head. Should I? He's coming out today. To do what? Inspect the equipment. Heather's expression changed. Not much, but Madison saw it. You hired someone already? Yes. You don't know what this could cost. I asked his rate. You haven't even decided what you're doing with the place. Madison put the photograph back in the binder. I'm finding out what works. Heather lifted a box and carried it to the discard pile. Just don't spend money because you're angry. Madison almost answered. Then she noticed the old pattern waiting for her. Heather offered judgment. Madison defended herself. Heather softened. Madison agreed to something she hadn't meant to agree to. She picked up the binder. I said I'd help for an hour. I've done an hour. Heather glanced at the wall clock. There are 6 boxes left. Benjamin can do 3. You know he won't. That doesn't make the other 3 mine. Heather gave a small, disbelieving laugh. Fine. Madison took the binder upstairs. At the kitchen table, she photographed every page mentioning the station. Heather came up carrying 2 empty jars. Can you at least drive the donation boxes into town? She asked. Not today. You're going that way. I have things in my car and I need supplies. It's one stop. Madison zipped the binder into William's old canvas tool bag. You could make one stop too. Heather set the jars down too hard. I'm trying to get this house ready, and I'm trying to get the station open. For once, neither of them added anything. Madison left through the front door. Her hands shook after she reached the car, which annoyed her more than the argument had. She sat behind the wheel and waited until they stopped. At the hardware store, she bought batteries, dust masks, penetrating oil, a pry bar, a door brush, and a pack of mouse traps. The total came to $83.19. She kept the receipt. Luke's service truck was already at the station when she arrived shortly after 4. He stood beside the tower, wearing work boots and a faded green shirt. At 29, he had the solid, sun-browned look of someone who spent his days beside equipment nobody noticed until it failed. A metal case lay open near his feet. You're early, Madison said. The soil sensor behaved. That happens? Not often. He nodded toward the binder under her arm. You found the blue book? You've seen it? William brought it to every spring service. He didn't trust digital copies. Madison handed him the ownership pages. Luke read the equipment list, then checked the serial plate on the cabinet without opening it. Matches, he said. He checked the tower, grounding wire, temperature shield, and rain gauge. He did not touch anything before taking a picture. Madison followed him with the clipboard. You're writing down what I do? He asked. Grandpa would. He'd also tell you my handwriting looks like fence wire. Was he still maintaining this last year? Luke stopped beside the rain gauge. He was maintaining it the last time I worked with him. When was that? Early autumn. We replaced a cracked connector on the temperature probe. Madison tightened her grip on the clipboard. My family said it hadn't worked in years. Luke looked toward the cottage. Maybe they meant nobody was receiving the readings. That isn't the same thing. No. Did he tell you it was shutting down? He told me he needed it reliable. For what? Luke rubbed dirt from the cereal plate with his thumb. He didn't say. William liked giving people one piece of a job at a time. That sounded exactly like him. Luke opened the cabinet. Dust lay across the components, but the wiring remained bundled and labeled. The electronic display stayed dark when he pressed a button. Dead battery? Madison asked. Maybe. Could be the regulator, fuse, water damage, or the logger itself. How much? For today, the service call. To diagnose properly, I need to test the power line and each instrument. If parts are available, you might keep it under 1,000. If the logger is bad, it climbs. Madison thought of her savings. She also thought of Heather saying she'd quit after a month. Do the first hour. Luke studied her face. I don't work free because I knew your grandfather. I didn't ask you to. I'm telling you before either of us feels awkward. Do people ask? People ask rural service companies for favors every day. Then they call us expensive when we send an invoice. Madison nodded. Send the invoice? He smiled once. All right. The cottage breaker panel had power at the main feed, but half the circuits were switched off. Luke tested the outlets while Madison cleared mouse nests from beneath the counter. When he turned on the kitchen circuit, the ceiling fixture flickered, buzzed, and came alive. The light was weak and yellow. It still changed the room. Madison looked at the table, the raincoat, and the clear space she had wiped through the dust. Luke stood beneath the fixture. Bulbs nearly done. It's on. It is. Her phone rang. Heather again. Madison stepped onto the porch. I need pictures of the western fence, Heather said. The land agent asked for them. I'm not taking them today. You're already there. I'm working inside my property. It would take 5 minutes. Madison looked across the survey stake at Heather's field. You'll need to come take them. Another silence followed. Are you serious? Heather asked. Yes. All right, Heather said at last. I'll do it tomorrow. The call ended. Inside, Luke had placed William's photograph beside the open binder. He made me redo that grounding fault 3 times, he said. The first fix worked. He said working wasn't the same as being dependable. Madison picked up the photograph. Why did you keep coming back? I had just started servicing farm monitors on my own. He sent my name to everyone who asked. Half my early customers came through William. Luke returned to the cabinet. I owe him respect. I don't owe this machine a miracle. I'm not asking for one. Good. Tomorrow, we'll trace the rain gauge line. Madison looked down at William's diagram. Beside the rain gauge connection, he had written 4 words in dark pencil. Record counter before reset. She copied them onto the clipboard, then turned the page and began a list of what they would need. The list began with a wire brush, electrical cleaner, new fuses, and a length of shielded cable. Luke added a plastic storage bin. For what? Madison asked. Anything we remove. Nothing goes in the trash until we know why it failed. She wrote that down too. The following morning, Madison arrived before him. She opened the cottage windows and swept the center of the room. Dust moved in gray clouds through the sunlight. She caught 2 dead mice behind the refrigerator and carried them outside with a shovel. By the time Luke's truck pulled in, she had cleared the table and wiped the kitchen light clean. The bulb still worked. He entered carrying 2 metal cases and a covered cup. You stayed here last night? No. You moved enough dirt for it. I wanted a place to lay out the papers. He set his cup on the counter. That's how it starts. How? What starts? You clean one surface, then you notice the wall, then the roof. Then you've spent every Saturday for a year arguing with a building. Madison looked at the water stain above him. I already noticed the roof. Luke opened the blue binder to William's wiring diagram. Then you're in trouble. They started at the rain gauge. It was the simplest instrument on the lot, at least from the outside. A metal funnel collected water and directed it into a small tipping mechanism. Each measured amount tipped a cup beneath the funnel. The movement sent a pulse through the cable to the logger. Luke removed the outer cover, while Madison photographed the screws and their positions. Dead grass, seed husks, and the remains of an insect nest had gathered around the inner frame. It can't measure rain like this, she said. Not accurately. Could it measure anything? enough to send a few bad pulses. He pointed to the cable running down the post. Its casing had split where it entered the ground. Water gets in there. The signal wanders. Sometimes the logger counts nothing. Sometimes it counts a flood on a clear day. Madison looked toward the cabinet. So even if we find readings, they might be wrong. Some might. That's why you compare instruments, service notes, and nearby stations. Can you do that? I can tell whether the equipment works. I'm not a climatologist. She knew what one did in broad terms. She had never expected to need one. Luke disconnected the exposed section and tested each end. The gauge switch responded when he tipped the mechanism by hand. The underground line did not. Broken cable? Madison asked, probably near the cabinet. Mice like the insulation. He walked the route with a handheld detector. Madison followed, marking the ground with small stones whenever the tone weakened. Near the tower base, the signal disappeared. Luke knelt and scraped soil away from the conduit. The plastic had pulled apart at a joint. Inside, 2 thin wires showed green corrosion. "That's our first failure," he said. "Can we fix it? We can patch it. A proper repair means replacing the whole buried run." "How much?" "Cable is cheap. Trenching isn't." "I can dig." He looked at the hard ground. "You say that now." "I know how to use a shovel. Everyone knows how to use a shovel for the first 10 minutes. Madison fetched William's shovel from behind the cottage. Its blade was worn narrow at the center. She pushed it into the soil near the marked line, careful to stay several inches away from the conduit. Luke watched her remove the first scoop. "Not directly over it," he said. "I know. You've done this?" "Grandpa made me help bury the old line." "When?" "About 6 years ago." Luke glanced at the shovel. "This might be that line." "It is." William had made the trench deeper than Madison thought necessary. She'd complained about the heat and asked why a weather cable needed more protection than a garden hose. "Because the ground doesn't care what's important," he'd told her. She had rolled her eyes and kept digging. Now the route came back to her. The conduit bent slightly east before reaching the cabinet. Madison changed direction before Luke's detector showed it. "You remember?" he said. "Some of it." She dug for almost an hour. Luke repaired the broken joint while taking 2 calls from customers. One had a grain dryer sensor reporting the wrong temperature. The other needed him the next morning at a cattle water monitor outside Belfield. He gave both callers times and prices. Nothing in his day revolved around Madison's inheritance. When she asked if he could stay through lunch, he checked his schedule before agreeing. At the cabinet, the old cable ended in a narrow terminal strip. Luke cleaned the contacts while Madison read the labels from William's diagram. "Rain input, position 3, she said. "I see it." "Then why are you looking at 4? "Because he moved it." He didn't change the drawing. He wrote it on the next page. Madison turned the sheet. In the lower corner, William had drawn a small arrow. "You read his notes better than I do," she said. "I had practice." "Was he hard to work for?" "He never hired me." "You know what I mean." Luke tightened the terminal screw. "He was hard to impress." "That's different. Did you impress him?" "Once, maybe twice." "The photograph says you caught the grounding fault. He put that in writing?" "It's on the back." Luke bent lower over the cabinet, but Madison saw the pleased expression he tried to hide. The rain gauge had a small local counter behind a clear cover. Its screen didn't need power from the main logger. Luke wiped away dust and read the number aloud. 486. Madison wrote it on the clipboard. "Does that tell us anything?" "Not by itself. It counts tips. It doesn't know whether they came from rain, a test, or someone shaking the gauge." She opened the blue binder. William's note said to record the counter before a reset. She searched the spring service pages, then the later sheets. The most recent entry was from the early autumn visit Luke had mentioned. Rain counter cleared after test. Beside it, William had written 0 and added his initials. Madison held the page next to the display. If he cleared it then, these happened afterward, unless the counter was replaced. Was it? Luke checked the serial label. William had copied the same number beside the service entry. No. Could 486 tips happen by accident? Not from one loose wire. A short could create pulses, but the line has been open near the conduit. That usually stops the signal, so the gauge collected something after the autumn service. It appears that way. Madison read the number again. 486 small movements had occurred after William's last documented reset. The station hadn't been dead for years. At least one instrument had kept doing its work. "Can we tell when?" she asked. Not from this counter, the logger would know, if it received the pulses. Luke attached his temporary cable between the rain gauge and the cabinet. Then he connected a test meter at the terminal strip. Pour water slowly, he said. Madison filled William's old measuring cup at the cottage sink. The pipe rattled, and the water came out brown before clearing. She carried the cup outside. How slowly, like rain, not like you're putting out a fire. She poured a thin stream into the funnel. Beneath it, the small mechanism tipped. Luke's meter sounded once. Again. She poured. A second tone came from the cabinet. The counter changed from 486 to 487. Madison stopped pouring. That worked. The gauge works. The new cable works. We haven't proved the logger does. It was still enough to make her smile. Luke saw it and looked back at his meter. He understood that expression. He'd worn it himself the first time William let him sign a completed service sheet. Madison covered the funnel before any more water could enter. We need to record that one tip as a test. Luke handed her the pencil from behind his ear. Your station. She wrote the date, time, starting count, test amount, and ending count on the service sheet. Her handwriting looked too round beside William's. She added her initials anyway. Luke connected power to the logger through a protected supply. The dark display flashed once, showing a line of broken symbols, then went blank. Is that bad? Madison asked. It's not good. He tried a lower current and checked the fuse. The display flashed again. This time a menu appeared for less than a second. Madison saw numbers but couldn't read them before the screen died. Did it show stored records? It showed something. Can you get them out? Maybe, but not today. Why not? The internal battery is weak. If I keep cycling power, it could corrupt whatever's in memory. Madison stepped closer to the cabinet. Then don't. That was my plan. What would it take? A stable power repair, first. Then the correct data cable and software. This model is old. Do you have them? I have a compatible cable. I don't have authority to say what any stored record proves. I own it. I'm not arguing ownership. I'm saying data can be copied badly. If these were casual readings, that wouldn't matter much. If William was submitting official observations, it matters a lot. Madison looked toward the cottage where the blue binder lay open. How do we find out? The maintenance register. The book in the cabinet? Luke nodded. Madison unlocked the lower compartment. The bound register sat in a metal sleeve. She photographed it before lifting it out. Its black cover had gone soft at the corners. William's name appeared on the first page beside an observer identification number. The entries began years earlier. Dates, checks, replacement parts, calibration notes, and report references filled page after page. Madison turned carefully. Some months contained only routine marks. Others included a note about heavy rain, frozen bearings, or a missed transmission. William never wrote about himself. Even when his handwriting became less steady, the columns remained aligned. Luke pointed to a notation repeated near the bottom of each monthly page. Report sent to Monsieur Powell. Who is that? Monica Powell. She coordinated observers in this part of the state. Do you know her? I met her once at a calibration workshop. She knew William longer than I did. Madison continued through the register. The final complete page covered the autumn service. The next page listed several equipment checks in William's hand. The last lines were blank except for the observer number printed at the top. No report had been marked sent. Could that mean he stopped reporting? She asked. It could mean he hadn't finished the page, or that something's in the logger. Luke didn't answer. A folded card was tucked into the rear cover. It held Monica Powell's old office number and a handwritten home number. Beneath them, William had written, "Call if record custody changes." Madison read the line aloud. Luke leaned against the table. That's more serious than a service note. What does record custody mean? Who has the original data? Who handled it? Whether anyone changed it? I opened the cabinet. You documented it, we tested the gauge, and documented that. Madison looked at the sheet spread across the table. Yesterday she'd wanted to know whether the station could be repaired. Now, repair was only part of the problem. If the logger contains anything, she said, we have to protect it. Yes. Can you make the cabinet secure and keep the power stable without opening the memory? Yes, but I'll need parts. How much? Luke wrote an estimate on his service pad. The total for the call, cable repair, cabinet seal, power regulator, and return visit came to $742. Madison had expected the number to hurt. It did. She thought of her apartment rent, her car insurance, and the balance she'd checked that morning. If the cottage plumbing failed, the savings would go faster. If the roof leaked through another storm, she might be protecting a logger inside a building she couldn't afford to keep. "When do you need payment?" she asked. "Half for the parts, the rest after installation." She opened her banking app and sent the first amount before she could talk herself out of it. Luke's phone confirmed the transfer. "You don't have to prove anything to your family," he said. "I know." He waited. Madison looked at William's instruction inside the register. She had spent years letting Heather decide what needed doing, then waiting for a place to be offered back to her. That habit had followed her all the way to the station. "This isn't for them," she said. "I want to know what he kept." Luke closed his tool case. "Then call Monica before we touch the logger again." After he left for the Belfield job, Madison locked the register in the cottage and photographed the cabinet seal. She called the old office number first. It had been disconnected. She stood beneath the kitchen light and entered the handwritten home number. Before pressing the call button, she looked at William's last empty page. Then she set a clean sheet beside it, wrote down the time, and made the call. It rang 7 times. An older woman answered. "Hello? May I speak to Monica Powell? This is Monica. My name is Madison Hart. I found your number in William Hart's maintenance register." The silence on the line changed. It wasn't empty anymore. "You have his register?" Monica asked. "Yes." "Where?" "At the station." "And the logger?" "In the cabinet. We haven't opened its memory. Who is we?" "Luke Erickson is repairing the equipment." Monica breathed out slowly. "Good. Luke knows not to reset anything. He told me to call you." "What condition is the register in?" "Dry. The cover is worn, but the pages are intact." "Did you remove it from the site?" "No. Has anyone else handled it?" "I did." Luke looked at it. "Your family?" "Not since I received the property." Monica asked Madison to read the observer identification number from the first page. Madison did. "That was Williams," Monica said. "Don't read me anything else over the phone." "Why?" "Because I want to see what's there before anyone starts describing it from memory." Madison looked at the dark logger cabinet through the cottage window. "Can you come out?" "I'm retired. I understand. That means I can't certify equipment. I can only tell you what I personally know. That's what I need." Monica asked for the address, though she already knew the road. They agreed to meet the following morning. "One more thing," Monica said. "Don't let anyone remove the logger. I won't. I mean anyone. Family, service company, buyer, recycler. It stays where William kept it until you know what kind of record you have." Madison wrote the instruction beneath the time of the call. "What kind could it be?" "We'll talk tomorrow." Monica ended the call. Madison slept badly. Every time she closed her eyes, she pictured the logger flashing and going dark. At 2 in the morning, she wondered whether the cottage lock was enough. At 3, she wondered whether William had expected someone to know what the register meant. By 6, she was back on the lot. She checked the cabinet seal, then checked it again. The service mark Luke had placed across the edge remained unbroken. Madison carried the register into the cottage and set it on a clean towel. Monica arrived shortly after 9 in a white sedan with mud around the wheel wells. She was 68, small and straight-backed, with silver hair cut close around her face. She carried a canvas field bag that looked older than Madison. She didn't offer her hand at first. "Show me the cabinet." Madison led her outside. Monica examined the station from several feet away. She looked up at the tower, down at the grounding line, and across to the rain gauge. "Who opened it? Luke and I? What did he change?" "The broken rain gauge line. We made one test tip and recorded it. He connected protected power to the logger twice. The display wouldn't stay on, so he stopped." "Show me where you recorded the test." Madison handed her the clipboard. Monica read the entry, checked the rain counter, and compared the time to the photograph Madison had taken. Only then did she hold out her hand. "I'm Monica." Madison shook it. "You always inspect people before introducing yourself?" "Only when they're standing beside 30 years of weather records." The words made Madison glance at the cabinet. "You know it was still official?" "I know what it was when William sent his last accepted report." "When was that?" "Late autumn of the year he died." Madison felt the answer settle. So my family was wrong. About what? They said the station had stopped operating years earlier. Monica looked toward the cottage. Families say a lot about work they never watched. Inside, she removed a pair of cotton gloves from her field bag. She didn't touch the register until Madison had shown her the ownership pages and explained how the equipment came to her. Monica read the serial numbered list closely. "William gave you the whole station record," she said. "That's what it sounds like. It's what it says. Why list every instrument? Because instruments get moved, cabinets get replaced. People say one station is the same as another because it stands on the same patch of ground. William didn't." Monica opened the register. Her manner changed as soon as she saw the first page. The caution remained, but something warmer moved beneath it. "He used the same green ink for headings all those years," she said. "You recognize it?" I argued with him about it. Our scanners hated green. Madison sat across from her. "How long did you work together?" "I began coordinating observation sites before this one joined the network. William came in with a box of handwritten readings and asked why Dickinson's official totals didn't match what he measured west of town." "What did you tell him?" "That one man with a bucket wasn't a climate network." Madison smiled. "What did he say?" "He asked for the equipment standards." That sounded like William too. Monica turned the pages slowly. She checked dates, observer codes, calibration references, and the marks showing when reports had been sent. She didn't read every line. She knew where missing work would show. At one entry, she stopped. This was the flood year. His access road washed out. Did he miss readings? He walked in from the county road. Monica turned another page. "This month, I rejected his first report. Why?" He rounded a temperature. "Grandpa, by 1 degree. He called me at home and argued for 40 minutes. Then he sent the corrected sheet." Madison looked at the careful columns. William had made the station seem effortless. She hadn't understood how much of its value came from doing the same small work when nobody was looking. Monica reached the final completed section. "Here," she said. Her finger rested on the observer number, then moved down the page. "This confirms the equipment check Luke described. The report reference matches the last packet my office received from William. So, the record was continuous. From the station's acceptance into the network through that packet, yes. No unexplained break." Madison kept her voice low. "That matters? It's the difference between a pile of readings and a record someone can rely on. What about everything after this page?" Monica examined the incomplete entries. "It wasn't submitted to me. Could it be in the logger? It could. The rain counter increased after the last reset. That tells us the gauge moved. It doesn't tell us what William recorded. He scheduled another service." Monica read the note. "He expected the station to continue." "You sound sure. I knew him." Madison had wanted that answer. Once she had it, a different question became harder to avoid. Did he leave it to me because he thought I'd find something? Monica removed her gloves. "I can't tell you what William thought. He never mentioned me?" "He mentioned all three of you." Madison waited. "He said Heather understood land. He said Benjamin understood opportunity." "And me?" Monica looked toward the raincoat hanging by the door. "He said you noticed when a number didn't fit. That was all?" It was also more than Heather or Benjamin had ever told her. Madison looked down so Monica wouldn't see how much she needed the sentence. Monica gave her a moment, then returned to the register. "There's another reason the record matters." Madison raised her head. "In the year before he died, William asked me to confirm the station's reporting history for Prairie Grid Cooperative." "What's Prairie Grid?" "They manage power and communications equipment across rural sites. Weather data helps them plan service and protect field crews." Why did they want Grandpa's history? They were considering this location for a site and data license. Madison repeated the phrase. "A license, not a land sale." They wanted the right to use the station location and receive dependable observations for a set term. Did Grandpa agree? He negotiated terms. "I saw the request for record confirmation. I didn't see a completed agreement. Would there be one in the register?" "No. The register proves the operating history. Prairie Grid would hold its own proposal." "What were the terms?" "I don't know. Was there money?" Monica gave her a patient look. "Businesses don't usually ask for 15 years of access as a favor." Madison sat back. The cottage suddenly felt less private. Until that moment, the station's possible value had belonged only to memory and work. Now, an outside company had wanted something from it before William died. "Who did he speak to?" she asked. "Maria Trujillo, operations director." Monica removed a small notebook from her bag and wrote a business number. "Call her directly. Don't guess at what Prairie Grid offered. Don't let your brother guess either." How do you know Benjamin would? William described him accurately. Madison took the paper. If there was an agreement, does it belong to me? That depends on the language, the property, and whether William completed whatever Prairie Grid required. I'm not an attorney, and I'm not Prairie Grid, but the record is mine. The bequest says it is. Monica opened the register to the back cover. Beneath William's custody instruction, she wrote the date and the purpose of her visit. She identified herself as the former observer coordinator and noted that the book appeared consistent with the register she had reviewed during William's reporting years. Then she stopped. I won't write that the last page is official. I didn't receive it. I understand. I also won't identify anything in the logger. That takes someone qualified to recover and compare the data. Who? Maria can arrange the right person if Prairie Grid still has an interest. Monica signed her entry. This doesn't prove a contract, she said. It proves where the register was today and who saw it. Madison studied the signature. What do I do with it now? Keep it dry, keep it with the station, record every person who touches the logger, and repair the instruments without replacing anything you may need to identify later. That sounds expensive. It can be. Monica packed her gloves. At the door, she paused beside William's yellow raincoat. He called me the week before Christmas, she said. Madison's hand tightened around Maria's number. What did he say? He asked whether the station identifier would remain valid if ownership changed. Did he say why? No. I told him the record could transfer if custody was clear and the equipment could be matched. What did he say? Just, good. Monica opened the door. That was our last conversation. Madison walked her to the car. Before leaving, Monica looked once more at the tower. William didn't keep that station alive by accident, she said. But don't decide what he left until you recover what's actually there. After the sedan disappeared, Madison returned to the cottage. She locked the register inside a dry metal file box and logged Monica's visit. Then she called Prairie Grid. A receptionist gave her Maria's work email and said she was away from her desk. Madison wrote a short message. She stated her name, the station identifier, and the fact that she now owned the listed equipment and records. She asked whether Prairie Grid still had an interest in the site. She attached only the first page of the bequest and Monica's new custody entry. The reply came before noon. Maria wanted to inspect the station on Friday. She also asked Madison to invite the current owners of the adjoining Heartland because William's original site discussion had included access and boundary conditions. Madison read that request twice. Calling Prairie Grid had worked. It had also made secrecy impossible. She forwarded the inspection time to Heather and Benjamin, then placed the phone face down beside the register. Within a minute, both their names appeared on the screen. Madison answered Heather first. What did you send me? Heather asked. An inspection time. I can read. Why is Prairie Grid inspecting anything? They had a prior discussion with Grandpa. About my land? About the station. The email says adjoining landowners. Because Maria asked you to be there. Heather went quiet. Madison heard a cabinet close in the background. What kind of discussion? Heather asked. A site and data license. A what? I don't know the terms. That's why she's coming. Who told you about this? Monica Powell. Another pause followed. Heather knew the name only from estate papers she hadn't considered important. You met with her? At the station? Without telling us? Madison looked at the custody entry inside the register. I didn't need permission. No, but if Grandpa was negotiating something involving the property, it should have gone through the estate. The property is settled. The farmhouse is settled. The land is settled. An old business discussion may not be. You'll be at the inspection. Ask Maria. Heather's voice sharpened. Don't sign anything before we understand it. I didn't ask you to approve anything. I'm asking you to wait. Until Friday, until we know what this is. That's what Friday is for. Heather ended the call first. Benjamin called immediately afterward. Hey, he said, sounding calmer than Heather. What's going on? Madison heard the friendliness and became more cautious, not less. Maria Trujillo is inspecting the station. Sure, but why? Grandpa discussed a license with Prairie Grid. What kind of license? I know the same amount you do. You must know more if you contacted them. Monica gave me Maria's name. Can you forward whatever Monica showed you? No. Why not? Because she didn't show me a contract. Benjamin shifted the phone. Madison, I'm not trying to take over. You usually say that after you've started. I'm offering help. These companies don't send an operations director over nothing. That was true. Madison hated that his most useful observations often arrived wrapped in an attempt to control the next move. "Come Friday," she said. "Listen to Maria. Don't agree to a number in the moment. I haven't been offered one. If you are, call me before you answer. Why? Because I understand negotiations. I understand the word no." He laughed softly as though she'd made a joke. "All right," he said. Friday. Luke returned the next afternoon with the regulator and cable. Madison had already exposed the remaining conduit. Her palms were blistered despite the gloves. He looked into the trench. "How long did you dig?" 3 hours. You made it 6 feet. The ground got hard. That was my point. I didn't say you were wrong. You didn't have to. They replaced the damage run together. Luke fed the new line through the conduit while Madison pulled from the cabinet end. Twice it caught. The second time, they had to remove a section packed with dirt and roots. The work left a dark line across the lot. Madison tamped the soil back into place with the shovel. It wasn't beautiful, but the cable was protected. Inside the cabinet, Luke installed the regulator and tested the voltage before connecting the logger. The display brightened. Words appeared clearly this time. "System ready." Madison leaned closer. "Don't touch it," Luke said. "I'm not touching it. You're leaning like you might." The logger moved to a status screen. Current wind speed appeared first, then temperature. The rain channel showed the single test tip they had recorded. "Those are live inputs?" Madison asked. "Yes. So it's reading the instruments, the ones connected." He checked the temperature against a calibrated handheld unit. The difference was small. Wind readings changed as the cups moved above them. Luke shut off access to the archive menu with a service lock. "Why lock it?" Madison asked. "So nobody opens stored data by accident. Could you copy it now?" "I could try." "Monica told you to preserve custody. Trying isn't preserving." Madison nodded. "Then we wait." Luke replaced the cabinet seal and photographed it. "We can show Maria live operation," he said. "Not reliable operation. What's the difference? Today proves the logger turns on. Reliability takes repeated readings, calibration, and weather. How long? Long enough to know it doesn't quit when I drive away." He handed her a schedule, morning and evening checks for the next several days. She would compare the station temperature with his reference unit, inspect the rain funnel, record the counter, and note any display errors. Madison studied the page. "I work evenings twice this week. Do the late check after work. That could be after midnight. The weather won't mind." He was right, and she knew William would have said the same. Luke packed his tools. "I can't come back until Monday. I've got 3 farm calls and a wind system south of Gladstone. Maria comes Friday. Then tell her exactly what works and what doesn't. I was hoping you'd be here. I have customers who booked before you." The disappointment showed before Madison could hide it. Luke rested one hand on the tool case. "You've got the records. You did the test. You own the equipment. You don't need me standing beside you to say those things." "I know. You keep saying that. Because people keep telling me." He considered answering, then picked up the case. "Call if the voltage changes," he said. For the next 2 days, Madison organized her life around the station. She checked the instruments before work, drove into Dickinson, worked her shift, then returned after dark. The cottage light became visible from the road before her headlights reached the turnoff. On Thursday night, wind pressed against the walls. The tower cups turned steadily. Madison entered the readings at 12:20 in the morning, then sat at William's table eating crackers from a vending machine packet. Her apartment felt far away. It was only a short drive, but returning there to sleep seemed pointless. She found an old wool blanket in the cottage cupboard, shook it outside, and lay down fully dressed on the narrow sofa. The ceiling stains stayed dry. At dawn, the logger was still running. Madison recorded the voltage and drew one careful line beneath the completed overnight checks. It was the first full day the station had operated under her name. Maria arrived Friday morning in a gray company vehicle. She was 43 with dark hair pulled into a low knot and a manner that made introductions feel like the first item on a list. Heather came next in her sport utility vehicle. Benjamin arrived 5 minutes later carrying coffee for everyone. He handed Madison a cup. "I didn't know how you take it. Black is fine. It has cream." She accepted it anyway. Maria began at the road entrance. She measured the width of the gravel turnoff and checked the distance from the station cabinet to the survey stakes. Heather followed closely, asking which parts of the land prairie grid expected to use. At this stage, I'm confirming whether the original site layout still exists, Maria said. Would your trucks cross my parcel? Heather asked. William's plan kept service access on the observation lot. So, why did you ask me here? Because the western boundary affects clearance and future construction. I don't want adjoining owners surprise later. Heather glanced at Madison. Surprise, in Heather's view, was what happened when someone failed to ask her first. At the tower, Maria read each serial plate and compared it to the bequest copy Madison had sent. These match, she said. Benjamin stood behind her. Is that unusual? It's necessary. Maria checked the cabinet seal and asked who had opened it. Madison showed her the work log, photographs, Luke's invoice, and Monica's custody entry. Maria read each one. You documented the test water? Yes. And the archive hasn't been opened? No. Good. Heather looked from the register to Maria. Can someone explain what Prairie Grid wanted from this station? Maria closed the folder. In the year before William died, we negotiated a 15-year site and data license. Benjamin's attention sharpened. For how much? Maria looked at Madison before answering. The proposed license payment is $240,000. No one spoke. The wind moved through the dry grass. A loose corner of the cottage gutter clicked against the roof. Heather recovered first. Paid to whom? To the lawful holder of the station, its operating record, and the related license rights, if all conditions are met. Benjamin moved closer. What conditions? William had to complete the required observation period. The record had to contain a qualifying severe storm. The station records also had to transfer legally to the current owner. Madison felt the coffee cup warming her hand. Did he complete the period? She asked. Our files show he was close. We never received his final data package. Monica confirmed an unbroken record through late autumn. That supports the history. It doesn't show what happened afterward. The rain counter shows activity after his last service. Maria nodded. That's useful. It isn't an authenticated weather observation. Benjamin pointed toward the cabinet. The rest could be in there. It could, Maria said. Then open it. Madison answered before Maria could. No. Benjamin frowned. Why not? Because the memory hasn't been recovered properly. Maria looked at Madison with brief approval. We use an independent climatologist for that, she said. The logger must be stable first. Then the stored record is copied, checked against the station register, and compared with regional measurements. Heather crossed her arms. What qualifies as a severe storm? The agreement defines several event types and measurement levels. I'm not going to speculate before we see the data. Could any old storm count? Benjamin asked. No. It had to occur during the required period and be recorded by this station under Williams' observer identification. Madison looked at the cabinet. Behind its metal door might be nothing more than routine wind and cold. The money existed, but it was not hers. Not yet, and perhaps never. What happens if there's no qualifying record? She asked. The proposed license expires unfulfilled. And if there is? After authentication, the lawful owner has 60 days to accept the agreement. Heather stepped toward Maria. You keep saying lawful owner. Are you questioning the probate transfer? I'm not questioning anything. I'm identifying what Prairie Grid requires. Madison handed Maria the serial numbered bequest. My grandfather left the station and all its records to me. Heather spoke before Maria finished reading. He left Madison equipment listed in the estate, but the station was attached to family property when the license was negotiated. The observation lot came to me too, Madison said. The tower and cabinet may have been fixtures, Heather replied. Fixtures belonged to the estate before the division. Benjamin looked at her. Heather. What? We need clarity. Maria returned the paper to Madison. Prairie Grid won't decide a family ownership disagreement. We'll review the transfer documents, but you'll need to resolve any challenge yourselves. Madison looked at her sister. Yesterday, Heather had considered the tower an eyesore near land she wanted to sell. Now she was studying its concrete base. Maria moved to the cottage and checked the incoming power, the file box, and the service log. The room still showed neglect, but it functioned. The light worked. The register was dry. The logger voltage had remained stable for 3 days. The site passes my preliminary inspection, she said. You can proceed toward data authentication once the instruments complete a reliable test period. That was the useful answer Madison had needed. Repair had moved the station forward. It had also put a price where her family could see it. Maria left after scheduling a follow-up call. Benjamin stayed near the tower, looking up at the turning cups. Heather walked to the Western Survey stake and measured the distance with her eyes. Madison locked the register inside the cottage. When she came back out, Heather was waiting beside the cabinet. "Don't arrange authentication yet," she said. "Why?" "Because I'm having the estate documents reviewed." Madison held the cabinet key in her hand. "You told me the station was mine. I told you the bequest was specific." "That sounds like the same thing." "It did when we thought it was worth $500. Madison looked at the tower, then at the field Heather planned to sell. Nothing about the property had changed that morning. Only their knowledge had. Heather picked up her bag. "Until we settle ownership," she said, "nobody should touch the logger." Madison closed her fingers around the key. "You don't get to lock me out of what you left me." "I'm not locking you out," Heather said. "I'm asking you to stop until someone reviews it. You asked me to remove the equipment last week. That was before we knew there was an agreement. There isn't an agreement yet. Then waiting shouldn't hurt anything. It hurts the repair schedule." Heather looked at the cottage, the open trench, and Luke's temporary weather cover. "You're spending money before you know whether you own the valuable part. I own the station. You own what Grandpa legally transferred. I want to know exactly what that means." She walked to her vehicle without waiting for an answer. Benjamin remained beside the tower. He watched Heather drive away, then looked at Madison. "She's scared she'll sell the west parcel too cheaply. That doesn't make my lot hers." "I didn't say it did." He picked up the coffee cup he had left on the cabinet base. "You should hear her out," he said. "She didn't ask me to hear her out. She told me to stop." "Because you're pushing ahead fast. I've repaired one cable. You contacted a company about $240,000. So did Grandpa." Benjamin smiled slightly. "That's different." "Why?" "Because he knew what he was doing." The words came out easily. Benjamin seemed to regret them only after he saw her face. "I meant he knew the deal," he said. "He negotiated it." "I know what you meant." He crushed the empty cup in one hand. "Let me help." "With what?" "The repairs, the review, Maria, all of it." Madison knew Benjamin's useful voice. He used it when landowners hesitated over lease terms. It was warm, patient, and built around the assumption that agreement was only a matter of explanation. "What do you want?" she asked. "A partnership?" "No, you haven't heard it. You said you wanted to help. Now it's a partnership. Because this costs money. You've already put what, 1,000 into it?" She didn't answer. "I can cover the restoration and any document review," he continued. "We create a small company. You bring in the station. I bring in the capital and handle the business side. Who controls the company? We both do. Who signs the Prairie Grid agreement? The company. And who manages its bank account? I would at first. You don't want to deal with bookkeeping." Madison looked at him. "You don't know what I want. I know you hate paperwork. I hated Grandpa's medical forms. That isn't the same thing." Benjamin's patience thinned. "You could lose this by trying to prove you can do everything alone. And I could lose control by letting you call it help." He lowered his voice. "Half of something is better than all of nothing." There it was. He already imagined half as generous. Madison unlocked the cottage. "I need to finish my checks. I'll send you a simple proposal." "Don't. I'm sending it. Read it before you decide." He left, and she heard his tires throw gravel onto the road. Inside, the logger voltage remained steady. Wind and temperature readings had continued through Maria's visit. Madison entered them into the service sheet, but her attention kept drifting to the license figure. $240,000 sounded large in the bank meeting. At the station, it broke into smaller pieces: cable, regulator, roof, plumbing, calibration, electricity, insurance, and years of work. Her phone showed a message from Luke. The anemometer bearing had begun dragging during his remote review of her readings. He could replace it on Monday. The part and labor would add $318. Madison approved the repair. Then the pipe beneath the kitchen sink split. Water struck the cabinet wall in a hard sideways stream. Madison dropped the clipboard and reached under the sink, but the small valve turned without closing. She ran outside to the main shutoff she had forced on her first day. It stuck halfway. She pulled harder. The rusted handle cut through her palm before the water stopped. By the time she returned, the cottage floor was covered from the sink to the table. The blue binder sat safely above it, but the bottom of the refrigerator and two cabinet doors were soaked. Madison called work. Her shift began in 40 minutes. "I have a water emergency," she told the evening supervisor. The supervisor reminded her that she had already arrived late twice that month. Once had been after William's estate meeting. The other time had been after the logger voltage check. "I can come in as soon as I stop the leak. We need someone at the front desk at 5. I know. If you miss tonight, I have to document it." Madison pressed a dish towel against her bleeding palm. Then, document it. The sentence sounded braver than it felt. She spent the next 3 hours pushing water through the door with a broom. A plumber came before dark, cut out the split section, and replaced the failed valve. The service cost $460. When he left, Madison sat on the porch step with her hand wrapped in gauze. Her work supervisor had sent a formal attendance notice. 2 of her shifts the following week had been reassigned. The lost hours would take more from her than the pipe repair. Luke called after seeing the photo she'd sent. "You need stitches?" he asked. "No." That wasn't an answer. It stopped bleeding. "Go get it looked at." "It's a cut. You can't dig with an infected hand. I'm done digging." For now. He arrived 20 minutes later, despite having said he couldn't return until Monday. He had come from the wind system south of Gladstone, and red dust covered his truck. Madison held up her bandaged hand before he could ask. "It's fine." Luke stepped inside and looked at the wet floor. This building is trying to introduce itself one failure at a time. The station is working, the cottage isn't. "I know." He checked the register box first. It was dry. "Good placement," he said. Madison leaned against the counter. She was tired enough that the small approval nearly undid her. Luke saw the attendance notice on the table. "You missed work for this? The pipe didn't check my schedule. You can't pay for repairs if you lose your job." "I know." There it is again. "What?" "You say you know when you mean you don't want to talk about it." Madison looked at him. "Did Grandpa teach you to be this irritating?" He encouraged natural talent. Luke picked up the damp clipboard and separated the pages. "You need a plan that doesn't depend on you driving out here twice a day from town. Remote monitoring? Eventually. First, stable power and a dry room. Both cost money, yes." She sat at the table. Benjamin offered to cover it. Luke didn't react immediately. "What does he want?" "Half. Maybe more once he writes it down." "Are you taking it?" "I don't know." Luke laid the service sheets near the open window. "That's your decision." "You don't have an opinion?" "I have several. None of them pay your invoice." Madison gave a tired laugh. His phone rang. He stepped outside to answer a customer whose wind alarm had failed again. Madison watched him walk toward the truck while explaining a fuse sequence. He had helped her, but he had his own work waiting. He couldn't be the station's answer any more than Benjamin could. Maria called the next morning for the promised follow-up. Madison took the call from her apartment with her wrapped hand resting on the table. "I reviewed the original proposal," Maria said. "The site layout still qualifies." "That's good." "It is. But I want to make sure you understand the obligation before you spend more." Madison opened a clean page in her notebook. "The license isn't payment for old data alone," Maria said. "Prairie Grid needs the station operating through the full 15-year term. Daily? The logger sends automatically once connected. The operator still has to inspect, maintain, document outages, and provide site access for service. Who would the operator be? That depends on the agreement. William intended to remain responsible while training a successor. Did he name one? Not in our copy." Madison pressed the pencil against the page. "If the record qualifies and I accept, could I operate it?" "You could, if the equipment passes authentication and you demonstrate reliable maintenance." "What happens if I take the license and stop after 2 years?" "Prairie Grid can end the agreement and recover unpaid portions. Serious failure could require repayment under the final terms." The money stopped looking like an inheritance. It looked like 15 years of mornings, frozen locks, failed wires, and reports made when she was sick or tired. "Could I sell the rights?" Madison asked. "We would have to approve any operator. The record and site are why the offer exists. Separating them would weaken the proposal." That answered Benjamin's plan more clearly than any argument could. Maria continued. "Your family's ownership question also has to be resolved before authentication. I won't schedule Isaac Newton while there's a dispute over who can authorize access to the logger." "Isaac Newton, the climatologist we use for station authentication. He's independent of the cooperative. He performs one recovery and verification. When can he come? After the station completes reliable testing and the ownership documents are clear, Madison wrote his name. "Thank you," she said. After the call, Benjamin's proposal arrived by email. It was 4 pages, not simple. His company would fund repairs up to a limit. Madison would assign the license rights to the new partnership. Benjamin would manage negotiations, payments, service contracts, and any future transfer. Major decisions required both signatures, but ordinary operating decisions belonged to the managing partner. Benjamin had named himself managing partner. Madison read it twice. Under his plan, she would perform daily station work while asking him before spending its money. She closed the document. Her apartment lease renewal sat unopened beside her laptop. Rent would increase in the autumn. She had planned to sign because staying felt easier than deciding where else to go. Now she looked around the room. The couch belonged to the landlord. The wall prints had come with the unit. Most of her belongings could fit inside her car and William's tool bag. She drove to the station that afternoon. The cottage floor had dried unevenly. One cabinet door had warped. The air smelled of wet wood, but the kitchen light came on. Madison stood at the table and called Benjamin. "I read your proposal." "Good. We can change details. I'm not assigning the license. You don't have a license yet. Then I'm not assigning the right to one. Madison, you're missing work and paying emergency plumbers. This is exactly why you need capital. I need a station that works." "Same thing?" "No, it isn't." He became quiet. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Operate it. For how long?" "If the agreement goes through, 15 years. You've never run anything for 15 years. Neither had Grandpa when he started." Benjamin's voice cooled. "Heather's review may prove you can't authorize any of it. Then I'll answer that with the bequest. You're turning this into a fight. I'm turning down your partnership." She ended the call before he could rename the difference. Then she called her landlord and said she wouldn't renew the apartment lease. It frightened her as soon as she heard herself say it. The cottage still needed a roof repair, safe water, heat service, and a door that opened without a pry bar. Moving there would take the rent money she saved and demand it back in labor. Madison unlocked the station cabinet and checked the live readings. They were steady. On a fresh page, she replaced the list titled "Find Out What Works." The new list began with "Keep the station operating." Under it, she wrote 3 more lines. "Document every repair. Prove reliable operation. Make the cottage livable before her lease ended." She took pictures of the list and sent one to Luke. He replied, "The hand comes first." Madison went to a walk-in clinic that afternoon. The cut didn't need stitches, but it needed cleaning and a better bandage. She returned to the station wearing a work glove with 2 fingers cut away so the dressing wouldn't catch. Luke arrived Monday with the anemometer bearing. "You're not climbing anything," he said. "I wasn't planning to." "You looked up when I said it. I'm allowed to look." He lowered the instrument with the tower's service cable. The old bearing grated when he turned it. "That explains the slow readings," Madison said. "It explains some of them." He handed her the worn part. Rust had gathered inside the ring. "Keep it?" she asked. "Storage bin." She labeled a paper bag with the date, instrument serial number, and reason for removal. Luke watched her place it beside the damaged cable. "William would approve," he said. Would he say it? No. They installed the replacement and raised the instrument. Once the cups caught the wind, their speed increased without the small hesitation Madison had seen before. Luke compared the logger output with his calibrated meter. "Better," he said. "How much better?" "Close enough for the first check." "Close enough isn't a reading." Luke looked at her, then wrote down both numbers. They moved to the cottage door. Madison had removed the loose paint and found the bottom edge swollen almost half an inch. Luke showed her how to mark the high spots. She planed the wood while he took a service call beside his truck. When he returned, the door opened without the tire iron. Madison closed it, opened it, and closed it again. "You can stop testing it," he said. "I've never used the key from inside. That's generally where people use doors." She ignored him and turned the lock. The bolt slid cleanly. It was a small repair, but it changed the cottage. The door no longer felt like something she had forced her way through. It worked for her. Luke installed a remote voltage alarm on the logger. It would send Madison a message if the power dropped outside its safe range. The device wasn't connected to Prairie Grid and couldn't transmit archived observations. It only watched the station while she was away. "This helps with your work schedule," he said. I lost 2 shifts. You still have the others. For now. Then answer the alarm if it comes. Don't stare at the app every 10 minutes. Madison stared at the app while he said it. He covered her phone with his hand. The station is supposed to reduce uncertainty. Don't use it to create more. She put the phone in her pocket. After Luke left, Madison prepared a complete ownership folder. She copied the probate transfer, the serial numbered bequest, the survey page for the observation lot, and every custody entry. She added photographs showing the numbers on the instruments. She didn't ask Heather which papers mattered. She didn't ask Benjamin to read them. She sent the folder to Maria and wrote that the equipment, record, and lot had all transferred to her under the same bequest. If Heather believed otherwise, Madison wanted the exact item being challenged in writing. Then she emailed the same folder to Heather and Benjamin. Heather replied first. I received this. A review is underway. Benjamin called. You sent 60 pages, 43. What am I supposed to do with this? Read it. I already know what the bequest says. Then you know what I own. I know what you think you own. Madison closed the file box. If you have a different document, send it. You don't understand fixture law. Neither do you. That's why Heather is getting a review. Then she can send the result. Benjamin changed his tone. Are you really moving into the cottage? How did you know? Heather drove past. She could have asked. She said there was a mattress tied to your car. It's a folding bed. You gave up your apartment over this? My lease was ending. What happens if the license doesn't happen? I still have a place to live, a place with a leaking roof. I put a temporary patch over it. He let out a slow breath. You're making it hard to help you. I'm not asking you to. Madison ended the call and returned to the roof patch. The cottage wasn't ready for a permanent move. It had safe water now, one working sink, one reliable electrical circuit, and a toilet that ran unless she lifted the tank handle. The roof needed more than sealant. The bedroom smelled damp. She set the folding bed in the main room instead. William's table became her desk. The blue binder stayed on one side, her ownership folder on the other. She brought 2 plates, 1 saucepan, clothes, towels, and the lamp from her apartment. The lamp's warm shade made the ceiling stain look less severe. On Wednesday, Maria responded to the ownership folder. The documents appeared complete, but Prairie Grid would wait for Heather's stated objection before scheduling authentication. Maria also needed a reliable operating sample from the restored instruments. Madison called her. How long a sample? At least several continuous days with manual checks. More if the readings wander. I already have daily logs. Send them, Madison did. Maria reviewed the temperatures, voltages, wind checks, and rain counter. The anemometer readings before the bearing replacement had to be separated from those after it. You documented the change correctly, Maria said. Does the test period start over? For wind, yes. The other channels can continue. What if we get weather before the test is complete? Record it normally. Current weather can prove equipment function. It can't replace William's missing observation. Madison understood. Nothing she recorded now could satisfy the old contingency. The present could only show the station was ready to preserve whatever the logger held. That evening, clouds built west of Dickinson. The air inside the cottage became heavy. Madison checked the forecast, then checked the gauge funnel and cabinet seal. Luke called while she stood beneath the tower. I've got a customer east of you asking whether that line is producing wind. It's moving. How much? She read the live display. That's higher than my app shows, Luke said. The app is probably using the airport. Send me updates every 15 minutes. Don't send archive data, just current readings. You're using my station, I'm comparing it. Don't sound so pleased. Madison was pleased. The first rain arrived in wide drops that marked the dust. She went inside before it strengthened and watched the gauge count from the logger display. The restored cable carried each tip. Wind speed climbed, fell, then climbed again. The lights flickered once. The regulator held. Madison wrote every change. Water tapped the metal roof and found one weak point near the kitchen wall. A drop formed on the ceiling, then fell into the saucepan she placed beneath it. The cottage still had opinions about her progress. Luke called again. Your wind reading just passed mine by 11 miles an hour. Is that possible? The line is narrow. It may be crossing you first. What does your customer need? He has an uncovered control panel on a grain system. He wants to know if he has time to close it. Madison read the current direction and speed. Tell him the wind has shifted north and it's still rising. Luke repeated the numbers to someone near him. A few minutes later, he sent a message. Panel covered. Keep logging. The rain lasted less than an hour. It never became severe, but it gave every repaired part a real test. The gauge tipped steadily, the wind instrument turned freely, the cabinet stayed dry, and the voltage alarm never sounded. When the line passed, Madison walked outside wearing William's yellow raincoat. Water shone on the tower legs. The funnel drained cleanly. The buried cable remained protected beneath dark, wet soil. She photographed the counter and returned inside. Luke came by the next morning before his first call. He compared the logger record with Madison's manual entries and his customer's monitor. The timing matches, he said. And the measurements? Within normal difference for distance. Can you put that in the service report? I already did. He handed her the page. For the first time, a weather event had passed over the restored station while Madison operated it. The instruments had stayed connected from beginning to end. She sent the report to Maria. Maria called 2 hours later. This is enough to complete the initial reliability sample, she said. Keep the station operating, but you don't need to restart the test unless a component fails. So the equipment is ready? For authentication, yes. The ownership objection remains. Madison looked through the cottage window at the rain gauge. What exactly has Heather filed? Nothing formal with Prairie Grid. She asked us to pause. Did she identify a conflicting document? No. Then I'm asking you to schedule Isaac. Maria was quiet for a moment. I can reserve a date, she said. I won't authorize him to open the archive until the ownership issue is addressed. Reserve it. The earliest is 2 weeks from Tuesday. I'll take it. Maria sent the date while they were still speaking. Madison added it to the service calendar. Then she forwarded the confirmation to Heather and Benjamin. She didn't ask whether the date suited them. She stated that the equipment had passed its reliability sample and that authentication would proceed unless someone produced a valid reason it could not. Heather didn't reply. Benjamin sent one sentence. You're forcing this now. Madison set the phone down and logged the morning reading. At noon, Heather's vehicle stopped beside the Western Survey stake. She got out, took several photographs of the tower base, the cabinet bolts, and the concrete beneath them. She never crossed onto Madison's lot. She didn't need to. Madison had given her a clear target. By evening, the photographs had become part of Heather's written objection. Maria forwarded it to Madison the next morning. Heather had attached one page from the estate inventory. The tower, cabinet, gauge, and buried lines appeared under the heading Site Fixtures and Improvements. She argued that equipment fixed to the ground had belonged to the whole estate when William negotiated with Prairie Grid. In her view, the later transfer of the observation lot didn't automatically transfer a business opportunity created before probate. She didn't claim the cottage. She didn't claim the $500 of scrap. She claimed the part that might produce the license. Maria's message was brief. The authentication appointment was suspended. Madison called her immediately. You said my documents appeared complete. They do. Then why did you cancel Isaac? I suspended the appointment. Prairie Grid won't pay an independent specialist to enter a family ownership dispute. He'd be entering my property. He'd also be accessing data. Your sister now claims belongs to the former estate. The bequest says all station records. I know what it says. Then what else do you need? Either a withdrawal from Heather or a clear resolution of her objection. Madison walked from the cottage to the tower. The morning check had been normal. The station kept working while everyone argued over who could benefit from it. Can Heather actually stop me from opening my own logger? She asked. That isn't for Prairie Grid to decide. But you canceled the person qualified to open it. We canceled company sponsorship. Isaac can work directly for a station owner if he accepts the engagement. Madison stopped. What would that cost? I don't set his fee. Would Prairie Grid accept his result? If he uses the same authentication process, yes. And if there's no qualifying record, you would still owe him. Maria gave her Isaac's professional contact information. Madison wrote it beneath the suspended date. Will you hold the date? She asked. I can hold it for 2 business days. After that, he has another field assignment. Another deadline had arrived, this one created by Heather's objection. Madison thanked Maria and ended the call. She sent Heather a message asking to meet at the farmhouse. Heather replied that she would be there after 4. Benjamin added himself to the conversation and said he was coming too. Madison brought the serial-numbered bequest, the estate inventory, and the survey. She also brought a copy of Benjamin's partnership proposal. Heather had cleared the kitchen table since Madison's last visit. Only 3 chairs remained around it. Benjamin took the chair nearest the window. Madison stayed standing until Heather sat. "You canceled the authentication," Madison said. "I asked Prairie Grid to wait. They removed the appointment. Then Maria made that choice. You knew she would." Heather folded her hands. "I knew she wouldn't proceed while ownership was disputed. Do you believe the equipment is yours?" "I believe Grandpa's license discussion involved estate property." "That isn't what I asked." Heather looked at the papers Madison had placed on the table. "The tower is attached to the ground," she said. "The cabinet is wired into the cottage. The inventory calls them fixtures. The bequest lists them by serial number. It also lists the cottage and lot. That doesn't answer whether the license belonged to Grandpa personally, the land, or the estate as a whole. There was no completed license. Then the opportunity should be divided fairly." Madison understood at last. Heather's objection wasn't really about bolts, concrete, or the heading on an inventory page. It was about changing the division after the rejected item proved useful. "Would you be making this argument if the station were still worth $500? She asked. Heather's face tightened. "That estimate was based on what we knew. You knew Grandpa listed every instrument. We didn't know why. You didn't ask. Neither did you until last week. That landed because it was true." Benjamin leaned forward. "This is why a partnership makes sense. We stop arguing about old wording and share the value." Madison placed his proposal in front of Heather. "Have you read this?" Heather glanced at him. "No." Benjamin manages the money, negotiations, service contracts, and future transfers. I operate the station. "That's a draft," Benjamin said. "It's the draft you sent me. I said we could change details." Heather turned the pages. Her expression became cooler as she read. "You gave yourself managing control?" "I'm bringing capital to something you said was scrap," Madison replied. Benjamin looked from one sister to the other. "I'm the only person here offering a way forward." "You offered yourself control," Heather said. "At least I'm offering you a share." Madison caught the word. Her A share? Benjamin realized his mistake. "I meant both of you. We could structure it 3 ways. Heather pushed the proposal back. "I'm not putting the west parcel into a company. No one asked you to. The boundary clearance is part of the license. Maria said service access stays on Madison's lot. Then why was I invited? To avoid surprises." Heather's laugh held no humor. That worked well. Madison opened the survey. "I'll sign a clear boundary agreement. Prairie Grid stays on my lot. Their vehicles use my entrance. Nothing crosses the western line without written permission." Heather looked at the map but didn't touch it. "What about future equipment?" "Same rule." "And clearance?" "I won't place anything over the line. You can't guarantee what Prairie Grid asks for later. I can guarantee I won't give them your land." Heather studied her face. The offer answered Heather's practical fear, but it didn't give her part of the payment. Madison could see the two concerns separating. Benjamin could see it too. "If Heather withdraws," he said, "you'll go straight to authentication." "Yes. And if there's a qualifying record, you'll sign for the full amount, if the terms are right, without us. The station was left to me." Heather stood and walked to the sink. She looked out at the yard where the utility trailer still waited. "The land buyer wants final boundary information by the end of the month," she said. "A 15-year operating site next door affects the sale. It was an operating station when you listed the land. It looked abandoned, so you expected to benefit from it being neglected." Heather turned. "I expected the estate division to end. So did I." For a moment, none of them spoke. The farmhouse had been William's home, but it no longer felt like his. The cleared counters and missing chair made every sound sharper. Madison slid the proposed boundary page toward Heather. "This protects your sale," she said. "It doesn't give you my license." Heather didn't pick it up. "I'll have it reviewed. When I can. I have 2 business days to hold Isaac's date. That isn't my deadline. No, it's mine." Benjamin pushed his chair back. "You don't have to pay Isaac yourself. Take the partnership and we'll cover it." "How much is the fee?" He paused. "Have you asked?" "Not yet." "Then ask before making this dramatic." Madison gathered her papers. "I'm asking now." She called Isaac from the front porch. He answered between appointments and listened while she described the station, the repaired logger, the custody register, and Prairie Grid's suspended sponsorship. "I know the Hart station," he said. "You do?" "I know its identifier. I've never inspected it." "Can you keep the date Maria reserved?" If you authorize the work and provide the custody records, what would it cost? His fee for travel, data recovery, instrument comparison, regional analysis, and a written authentication was $4,800. Half was due when she booked. The remainder was due after the work, whether the result helped her or not. Madison looked through the porch window. Heather stood near the sink. Benjamin had moved beside her. They were speaking quietly. "What happens if the logger fails during recovery?" Madison asked. "I make one controlled attempt. If the memory can't be copied safely, I stop. And if there's nothing useful, I report that. Could someone accuse me of changing the data? That's why I examine custody, seals, service notes, and timestamps. I don't accept conclusions from the owner." Madison appreciated the answer, even though it frightened her. "Hold the date," she said. "I'll confirm tomorrow." She returned inside. Heather had read the boundary page while Madison was outside. "This needs a clause about noise, lights, and construction," she said. "We can add reasonable limits and liability if prairie grid damages my field." "Yes." Benjamin looked at Madison. "What did Isaac say?" She told them the fee. Heather stared at her. "You don't have $4,800 to gamble. I have savings. For your move. And the cottage. The cottage needs a roof." "I know." Benjamin stood. "This is ridiculous. Sign the partnership. We'll pay the fee, and if the data fails, you don't take the loss alone. If the data succeeds, I don't control it alone. You're choosing risk because you're angry." Madison looked at the 3 chairs, the clean table, and the room Heather had emptied by making one sensible decision after another. "No," she said. "I'm choosing the duty that came with what Grandpa left me." Heather set the boundary page down. Then, "Don't expect us to cover what happens." Madison met her eyes. "I don't." That answer cost more than the authentication fee. It ended the last quiet belief that if things went badly, Heather or Benjamin would step in because family always did in the end. They might not. Madison drove back to the station as rain began spotting the windshield. Inside the cottage, she opened her banking app and moved money from the account she had kept for emergencies. The roof would have to wait. So would the better heater and the replacement cabinets. She paid Isaac's deposit. Then she printed the confirmation and placed it in the register beside her work logs. The archive remained dark behind its service lock, holding the only record that could justify the cost or make it foolish. Madison sent Heather the revised boundary terms anyway. She added limits on access, construction, light, and damage. She didn't offer revenue. Before midnight, Isaac confirmed the appointment. Madison turned on the kitchen lamp, checked the logger voltage, and accepted that the station's one chance would be opened at her expense. The revised boundary terms arrived the next morning. Heather had added limits on permanent lighting, service vehicle access, new tower construction, and damage to the west field. One paragraph would have required Madison to get written permission before changing any exterior equipment visible from Heather's land. Madison deleted that paragraph. She replaced it with a narrower rule. Equipment could be repaired or replaced within the existing station footprint. Anything extending across the survey line required both owners' written approval. She sent it back. Heather called 10 minutes later. "You can't add another tower without telling me. I can't add one outside the existing footprint. That isn't the same thing. It keeps your boundary protected. It also lets me maintain my station. What about prairie grid? They use my entrance and stay on my lot." Heather was quiet. "Are you offering this if I withdraw the objection?" she asked. "I'm offering it either way." "Why?" "Because the boundary should be clear." Heather had expected a trade. Madison could hear it in the pause. "The land buyer wants certainty," Heather said. "Then sign it and give them certainty." "What do you get?" "My own certainty." Heather didn't answer. Madison continued. "You don't have to share your sale with me. I'm not sharing the station with you. That isn't how family property works. It is after probate." Heather ended the call without agreeing. Benjamin called that afternoon. "Don't give her the boundary document yet," he said. "I already sent it. Unsigned, signed by me." He swore under his breath. "You had leverage," he said. "Heather needs that parcel sale. You could have made her withdraw before protecting the boundary. That would make the station her problem. It is her problem. No, her field isn't mine, and my station isn't hers. You're being noble with money you don't have. I'm being clear. You could make her come to you. I don't want her to come to me because she's trapped." Benjamin gave a short laugh. "You still think this ends with everyone understanding each other?" Madison looked at the operating list on the wall. No, she said. I think it ends with everyone knowing where the line is. Heather signed the boundary terms the following day. She also sent a separate statement to Maria. She acknowledged that the observation lot, cottage, and serial numbered equipment had transferred to Madison. She did not withdraw her argument that a license negotiated by William might retain value for the wider estate. It was a smaller objection, but it remained an objection. Maria called after reviewing it. The equipment question is clear enough to proceed, she said. Because Heather signed, because she hasn't produced a document contradicting your bequest. The boundary agreement removes Prairie Grid's access concern. What about her claim to the license? That will have to be addressed before execution. It doesn't prevent you from authorizing examination of your logger. So Isaac is coming? If you still want him at your expense. I do. Then I'll attend as the potential license holder. I won't direct his finding. Madison wrote the appointment time beside the logger checks. Should Heather and Benjamin come, they aren't required for access? That wasn't my question. Maria understood. If you want the result witnessed, invite them. Madison could have kept the examination private. She could have learned what the logger contained before deciding what to share. That would have given her time to prepare, and perhaps time to use the result against Heather's land deadline. Instead, she sent both of them the appointment details. Heather accepted. Benjamin replied that he would be there. Luke spent the day before Isaac's visit checking every repair. He tested the regulator under load, inspected the cabinet seals, cleaned the grounding connection, and placed a backup power supply beside the logger. He did not connect it. Isaac decides how he wants power handled, he said. Madison had moved the folding bed into the bedroom, so the main room could be used for the examination. She scrubbed the table, washed the window, and set out 5 mismatched chairs. Luke counted them. Expecting a crowd? Isaac, Maria, Heather, Benjamin, and me. That's 5. You're staying. I'm the service technician. You made the equipment reliable. That doesn't make me part of the ownership discussion. It makes you the person who can answer what was repaired. Luke looked at the chairs again. I have a pump monitor call at noon. We start at 8. If this becomes a family argument, I leave at 9. That seems fair. It won't become an argument before 9. I didn't say that. He smiled and returned to the cabinet. Madison opened the register to Monica's custody entry. The observer identification number appeared on the same page as William's instruction to call if custody changed. Will Isaac accept this? She asked. He decides. Maria has the network copy. That helps. What if Heather says Monica was helping me? Monica wrote what she personally saw. That's why it matters. Luke replaced the final screw on the cabinet's outer plate. Don't try to convince Isaac of anything tomorrow, he said. Give him the records and let him work. I know. He glanced at her. Madison corrected herself. I'll try. That evening, she walked the station lot and photographed every instrument. The wind was light. The tower cups turned without sticking. Inside, she laid out the ownership documents in order. First came William's serial numbered bequest, then the transfer of the observation lot and cottage. After that came the station register, Luke's repair logs, her daily checks, Monica's custody entry, and the boundary agreement. The papers did not create a storm record. They only made it possible for one to be believed if it existed. Madison slept on the folding bed for 3 hours. At 7 the next morning, she made coffee in the cottage. She had 1 clean mug, so she bought paper cups and placed them beside the pot. Isaac arrived first. He was 46, broad-shouldered, with wire-framed glasses and a black equipment case. He gave Madison a business card, then stood outside until she confirmed that he had permission to enter and examine the station. You own the lot? He asked. Yes. The listed equipment? She handed him the bequest. He read each serial number and compared it with the photographs before stepping near the cabinet. Who has keys? He asked. Only me. Has any duplicate been identified? No. Who applied the current seal? Luke. Who witnessed it? I did. Isaac wrote down both names. Maria arrived while he examined the tower. Heather parked beside her. Benjamin came last and stayed near his vehicle until Maria greeted him. Luke walked over from the rain gauge carrying his calibration meter. Isaac nodded to him. You repaired the input line? Yes. You accessed archive memory? No. Attempted? No. Powered the logger? Twice through protected supply before the regulator replacement. The display failed. I stopped. Documented? Luke handed him the service sheet. Isaac compared the times with Madison's photographs. He asked about the one rain gauge test tip, the anemometer bearing, and the live weather sample. Luke answered without adding opinions. At 9 minutes before 9, no one had argued. Isaac moved the examination inside. Heather took the chair nearest the door. Benjamin sat across from Madison. Maria remained beside the table, where she could see every document. Isaac read the first page of the register. Maria opened a secure file on her tablet. The observer identification matches the network roster, she said. Name? Isaac asked. William Hart. Site? Hart Cooperative Weather Station, 116th Avenue Southwest. Active period? Maria gave him the network dates without interpreting whether the final contingency had been met. Isaac checked the report references against her file. Monica's old office confirmations appeared beside the same monthly numbers William had written. Who can identify Powell's signature? He asked. Maria enlarged a retired personnel record on the tablet. The signature matches. Her custody entry also includes her former coordinator number. Heather leaned forward. Does that prove whatever's in the logger belonged to Grandpa? No, Isaac said. It proves Powell examined this register and identified its custody after transfer. I haven't examined the logger data. He turned to Madison. Did Monica remove any page? No. Did she add anything besides the custody entry? No. Did she see the powered display? No. Isaac signed his own arrival entry in the register. He then asked everyone present to write their name, role, and reason for attendance on a separate witness sheet. Benjamin looked at the form. Is this necessary? No, Isaac said. You can leave. Benjamin signed. Heather signed after him. Isaac photographed the cabinet seal from 4 angles. He checked Luke's mark beneath magnification, then compared it with the photograph taken after the regulator repair. The seal is consistent, he said. Madison let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. One uncertainty was gone. No one could reasonably claim she or Luke had opened the archive between repair and examination. Isaac connected his backup supply without powering the logger. Then he attached a read-only diagnostic lead to the service port. This first check reads the device, condition, and directory, he explained. It does not open observation files. Heather looked at Madison. If he finds something, we still haven't settled the license. I know. Benjamin lowered his voice. You could still pause and restructure this. No. You're about to give Prairie Grid everything. I'm about to find out what Grandpa recorded. If it's valuable, Heather won't let this go. Madison looked across the table at her sister. Heather had heard him. She didn't deny it. Using the record would do more than settle a license condition. It would remove the last place where all 3 of them could pretend the division had meant the same thing to each person. Madison turned back to Isaac. Continue. He powered the diagnostic lead. A directory appeared on his laptop. The system clock showed a small, measurable drift. Device identifiers matched the cabinet and register. The memory health check passed. Isaac opened the packet list without opening its contents. Rows of transmitted observations appeared first. At the bottom sat one entry marked unsent. He checked its file structure, then disconnected the lead. The archive is readable, he said. The final packet is intact. What does it contain? Heather asked. I haven't opened it. Isaac placed a clean evidence drive on the table and asked Maria to bring up the regional comparison data. The next action would release the packet in front of all of them. Isaac asked everyone to place their phones on the table. I'm not collecting them, he said. I want a clear record of who is present and whether anyone is recording. Benjamin set his phone down first. Heather kept hers in her hand. Am I allowed to record? She asked. Yes. State that you're doing it. Heather opened the recording app and gave the date, location, and names of those in the cottage. Then she added, My attendance does not withdraw my claim that any commercial value created before William Hart's death belonged to his estate. Madison looked at her. Heather met her eyes. She had chosen the sentence in advance. Isaac wrote it on the witness sheet. Any other statements before recovery? He asked. Benjamin leaned toward Madison. We could still agree to share this, he said. Whatever is in that packet, we settle before anyone reads it. No, Madison said. You don't know what you're turning down. Neither do you. That's the point. We decide as a family. Heather lowered her phone. We already divided the family property, Madison said. You both accepted the parts you wanted. We accepted Grandpa's division based on the information available. Heather replied. The information was available. The station register was in the cabinet. You didn't know that either. I opened what he left me, and now you're treating an unfinished business proposal as if he gave you a check. Maria spoke from the end of the table. The cooperative has issued no check. Heather turned toward her. But if the condition is satisfied, you'll pay Madison. If she holds the station, its record, and the license rights under the transfer documents. Yes. Heather's voice remained level. The station was no longer operating when Grandpa died. Luke shifted near the door but said nothing. Heather continued. Whatever this packet is, it was never submitted. It could be a service test or a failed transmission. It doesn't prove he completed the agreement. She wasn't pretending anymore. She had committed herself to a version in which William's work had ended before his death, and the valuable part had remained with the wider estate. Madison could have argued about the rain counter, the late service note, or Monica's visit. She didn't. She looked at Isaac. Open it. Isaac broke the new evidence drive from its sealed wrapper. He showed the empty storage directory to Maria and the camera on Heather's phone. Then he connected his read-only lead again. The logger powered through his backup supply. Its display brightened on the cabinet outside, visible through the open cottage door. Isaac copied the archive directory to the evidence drive. A progress bar moved slowly across his screen. No one spoke. Wind passed over the roof. The tower cups turned, producing a faint pulse from Luke's meter. When the copy finished, Isaac disconnected the logger before opening any file. He made a second copy and compared the two. The copies match, he said. What does that mean? Benjamin asked. The data came across without changing. Isaac selected the final unsent packet. A warning box appeared. Pending observation. Release for review? He turned the laptop so everyone could see. The logger stored this as an official observation packet, he said. Opening it releases a review copy. It does not transmit to Prairie Grid. Heather raised her phone slightly. Proceed, Madison said. Isaac selected the confirmation. The packet opened. The first line showed Williams Observer Identification Number. Beneath it appeared the Hart Station Identifier and the instrument serials. All matched the register and bequest. The recorded date was in December of the year William died. Maria sat forward. Isaac read the event description. Ice storm observation. Madison's hand tightened around the edge of the table. The screen filled with times and measurements. Temperature had fallen through the freezing point while rain continued. The rain gauge recorded sustained precipitation. Wind readings climbed through the evening. William had entered repeated surface observations and an ice accumulation check. The final entry had been closed hours before his death. For a few seconds, Madison heard only the movement of the anemometer outside. She remembered William's yellow raincoat. She remembered the service note for late December. While ice formed on the road and wires, he had come to the station and finished one more observation. Heather lowered her phone. Benjamin spoke first. Could someone else have entered it? Isaac pointed to the observer identification and device signature. The packet was created on this logger under William Hart's active identifier. Could Madison have added it after inheriting the station? No. How can you know? The file existed before the archive's last shutdown marker. Its internal time sequence matches earlier transmitted packets. Adding it now would alter that sequence and the archive directory. Isaac opened the clock comparison. The logger lost time after its power declined. I measured that drift this morning. When corrected, the packet times align with the station register and regional clock records. Heather looked at Maria. Does it qualify? I need Isaac's comparison, Maria said. Isaac brought up the regional data Maria had prepared. One station east of Dickinson showed the same temperature fall. Another recorded the wind shift several minutes later. Road and utility measurements showed freezing precipitation moving through the area in the same direction. He placed Williams' readings between them. The pattern lined up. The Hart station was west of the other instruments, Isaac said. Its earlier times are consistent with the storm's movement. He compared the rain gauge total with the counter found after Madison's repair. The counts fit once Luke's single documented test tip was removed. Luke pointed at the service log. Starting counter was 486. We added one test. Everything after that is current operation. Isaac nodded. The physical counter supports the stored event total. The repair record separates later testing. He checked the instrument serials again, then opened Monica's custody entry. Powell's coordinator number and signature match the network file, he said. Her entry identifies this register after Williams' death and before archive recovery. The observer number in the packet is the one she supervised. Maria asked, "Any unexplained break in custody?" "No." "Any sign the archive was altered?" "No." "Does the packet represent a valid observation from this station?" "Yes." "Does it meet the severe storm definition in the proposed license?" Isaac read Prairie Grid's threshold, then compared it with Williams' recorded ice accumulation, precipitation period, and wind measurements. Yes. The word was quiet. It changed the room anyway. Madison looked at the final timestamp. William had not left a message to explain himself. He had left the work completed in the form he trusted most. Date, time, instrument, reading. Isaac signed his preliminary authentication sheet. "The final unsent observation is genuine," he said. "It completes the station record through the required period." Heather stopped recording. For the first time since entering the cottage, she looked uncertain. "He really came out here that night," she said. Monica's old confirmation record showed William had not missed an official reporting period. The logger now supplied the last observation that had never reached her office. Maria compared Isaac's signed finding with a cooperative proposal. "The single data contingency is satisfied," she said. Benjamin stood and walked to the window. "So, the license is active?" "Not until execution." "Who can execute it?" Maria placed Williams' bequest beside the logger report. "The owner of the serial numbered station and its operating record." Heather touched the estate inventory. The equipment was listed as fixtures. It was also specifically transferred with the lot and records, Maria said. "Your signed boundary statement acknowledges that transfer. I reserved the license claim. You reserved your argument. You didn't produce a competing transfer." Heather's face reddened. Maria did not raise her voice. "Prairie Grid's rule is simple. We contract with the person who can provide the site, the authenticated record, and lawful access. Madison has documented all three." Benjamin turned from the window. "What about the fact that Grandpa negotiated the terms while he owned the whole estate? The proposed license was never a payment for the whole estate. It was tied to this station, this record, and continued operation here." He looked at Madison. "You can't maintain it alone for 15 years. Madison felt Luke watching her. She also felt the bandage beneath her glove, the lost work shifts, and the cottage floor that still rose slightly where the pipe had flooded it. "I won't do every repair alone," she said. "I'll operate it." Maria removed a prepared agreement from her case. "I brought this because Isaac confirmed the archive was readable yesterday. I didn't know whether the data would qualify." Heather stared at the document. "You brought the contract before our dispute was settled." "I brought an agreement that could only be signed after authentication and ownership review. Both are complete." Maria placed it in front of Madison. The total license payment was $240,000 across the 15-year term. Prairie Grid would receive current station data and scheduled site access. Madison would maintain the instruments, report outages, and keep the observation record. The first payment would come after activation. Later payments depended on continued operation. It wasn't instant wealth. It was enough to repair the cottage, protect the station, and make the work possible if Madison kept her part. The agreement gave her 60 days to accept. Maria pointed to the date. "You don't have to sign today." Benjamin stepped closer. "Don't," he said. "Take the 60 days. Let us work out a structure." Heather remained beside the table. "At least wait until I've reviewed Isaac's report." Madison looked at both of them. They had kept the farmhouse, the cropland, and the accounts without asking her to delay. Now they wanted time because the object left in her hands had demanded work before showing its worth. She read every page. She asked Maria how outages were handled. Maria explained the notice period and repair requirement. Madison asked whether Luke could remain the station technician. "If he meets service standards and you contract with him," Maria said. Luke answered from the doorway. "I do." Madison asked whether Prairie Grid needed any access across Heather's field. "No," Maria said. "The signed boundary plan keeps operations on the observation lot." Madison turned to Heather. "Your land stays separate." Heather looked at the agreement, then at the register. "And the payment? So does that." The answer hurt her sister. Madison saw it. She didn't enjoy it. Heather had spent a year believing that managing the estate made her the responsible one. William's last storm did not make her foolish. It showed that she had dismissed work she didn't understand. Madison signed the agreement. Maria signed for Prairie Grid immediately afterward. Isaac added the authentication reference to the license file. The agreement became effective that morning after the storm record had been verified. Maria connected a cooperative receiver to the live output port. It did not touch the archive. Current wind, temperature, and rain readings appeared on her tablet. "Data link active," she said. Outside, the restored rain gauge stood clean above the wet grass. The logger sent its first current reading under Madison's name. Heather gathered her copy of the boundary agreement. Benjamin left his unsigned partnership proposal on the table. Neither of them spoke as they stepped outside. Madison stayed beside the logger while Isaac sealed the authenticated copy. William's final storm had done exactly one thing. It completed the official record he had spent decades keeping. That was enough. Isaac handed Madison the sealed evidence drive and his invoice. The remaining balance was $2,400. She paid it from the same account that was supposed to replace the cottage roof. After the transfer cleared, Isaac gave Maria his signed finding and packed his equipment. "I'll send the full report within 3 business days," he said. "Could the result change?" Madison asked. "The wording may become more precise. The finding won't." He wrote the evidence seal number in the register and left. Maria stayed to test Prairie Grid's receiver. The first current readings arrived without trouble. The second transmission missed 1 temperature value. "Is that a failure?" Madison asked. "It's an activation issue." Luke checked the live output. The sensor read correctly here. The receiver dropped the field. Maria sent a test request. The missing value transmitted on the second attempt. "We need 30 continuous days below the allowed error rate," she said. "The first payment releases after activation. How long after?" 10 business days if the insurance and maintenance plan are complete." Madison looked at Luke. "What maintenance plan?" "A service schedule, outage contacts, backup power procedure, and replacement standards," Maria said. William had a draft. "You need one under your name." Benjamin had called the license a check. It was already behaving more like a job. "I'll have it," Madison said. Maria handed her a list of required items. "The agreement is executed. That doesn't mean the cooperative ignores performance. I understand. I think you do." Maria closed her case and stepped outside. Heather was still parked beside the survey stake. She had not driven away with Benjamin. Instead, she stood near Maria's vehicle holding the signed boundary agreement. Madison stopped on the porch. Heather walked to the edge of the lot, but didn't cross. "Can I come over?" she asked. It was the first time she had asked. "Yes." Heather crossed near the marked corner and approached the cottage. Her eyes moved to the tower, then down to the fresh cable trench. "I sent Maria a withdrawal," she said. Madison waited. "I'm no longer claiming the equipment or license. Thank you." Heather looked toward the road. The land buyer accepted the boundary terms. "They want a copy of the license access plan." "I'll send the page that applies to the boundary. That's fine." Heather held out her copy of the agreement. "I was wrong about the station being inactive," she said. "Yes. I believed what it looked like. You could have opened the cabinet. I didn't have the key. You could have asked Grandpa when he was alive." Heather lowered the paper. She had no answer that repaired a year of assumptions. Madison didn't offer one for her. After a moment, Heather said, "I was trying to finish everything. You finished the parts that made sense to you. I did a lot of work on the estate. I know. You say that as if it doesn't count. It counts. It just doesn't give you the right to decide what my part meant." Heather's face tightened, but she stayed. "I don't know how to fix that," she said. "Start by not coming onto the lot without calling. I asked today." "You did, and I withdrew the objection." Madison nodded. "Those were actions. They did not make the bank meeting disappear, but they were real." "The boundary agreement stays," Madison said. "Your buyer gets the certainty we promised." Heather looked surprised. "I thought you might change it." I said I wouldn't. The answer seemed to trouble Heather more than anger would have. She folded the agreement carefully. "Do you need anything from the farmhouse?" she asked. "Any station records still there?" "I'll look. Don't sort them for me. Bring the whole box." Heather almost objected. Then she nodded. "I'll bring it tomorrow. Call first." "I will." She walked back to her vehicle. Madison watched until she reached the survey stake. Heather stopped there, checked where the orange ribbon marked the line, and stepped around it instead of across the shorter route. That was as much repair as the day could hold. Luke sat at William's table drafting the maintenance plan. He He had divided the work into weekly inspections, monthly instrument checks, seasonal service, and emergency response. You put yourself down for emergency response, Madison said, with a call-out rate. I expected that. Good, we're learning. What does a yearly service contract cost? He named a figure. Madison looked at the invoice total, then at him. That much? You have an old station with an active data agreement. You charged less before. Before, you were asking whether it worked. Now you're asking me to help keep it dependable. He wasn't using the new value against her. He was pricing the responsibility he would carry. Can I pay monthly? She asked. Yes. Then write it that way. Luke added the payment schedule. My customers east of here asked whether your current readings will be available, he said. Can they use them? Prairie Grid gets the licensed feed. You can still publish basic current conditions if the agreement allows it. Maria checked the relevant clause before leaving and confirmed that Madison could share non-exclusive local readings. Official Prairie Grid analysis remained private, but wind, temperature, and precipitation could be made available to nearby farms. Luke offered to add a simple public display through his service system. How much? Madison asked. He told her. Not this month? Fair. Could we start with messages during bad weather? If you're willing to answer people. I am. Luke closed the maintenance draft. That's unpaid work. For now? He studied her, then nodded. For now. Madison returned to Dickinson for her evening shift. The supervisor met her in the back office before she could clock in. The attendance notice remained in her file. The reassigned shifts would not be returned that week. I need to know whether you can keep this schedule, the supervisor said. Madison had once answered questions like that by promising whatever kept people pleased. She placed a written availability sheet on the desk. I can work these hours reliably. I need the 2 late checks removed from next month. That reduces you to 4 shifts. I know. If you miss another evening without coverage, we'll have to reconsider. I understand. The supervisor read the page. Is this because of the property? It's because I operate a weather station now. The sentence sounded strange in a hotel office with a printer buzzing behind them. The supervisor looked at her bandaged hand, then signed the new schedule. 4 shifts, she said. Starting next month. Madison worked the front desk until 11. She checked in 6 guests, replaced a room key, and found extra towels for a truck driver who had been caught in the rain. She did not check the station app until her break. The voltage was steady. When she returned to the cottage after midnight, Benjamin's truck was parked on the gravel shoulder. He stood beside it with a cardboard file box. Madison pulled in, but left space between their vehicles. You could have called, she said. I did. Her phone showed 1 missed call from 9 minutes earlier. All right. Benjamin lifted the box. This was in Grandpa's desk. Heather said you wanted everything related to the station. Madison opened the top flap. Old observation forms, spare fuse envelopes, equipment catalogs, and mailing receipts filled the box. None was a hidden solution. They were the ordinary materials William had used to keep the record alive. You took this after he died, she said. I thought it was farm paperwork. Did you look through it? Not closely. That seems to be going around. Benjamin accepted the remark without answering. After a moment, he said, I withdrew the partnership proposal. I wasn't going to sign it, I know. Do you? He rested the box on the hood of his truck. You got what you wanted, he said. Madison looked toward the cottage. A saucepan still sat beneath the roof leak. I got work. You got $240,000. Across 15 years, if I keep the station operating, that's still more than $500. Yes. Benjamin glanced toward the farmhouse fields beyond the darkness. I would have handled the money well. That isn't why I said no. I know why you think you said no. There was the brother she recognized. He could surrender the proposal without surrendering his belief that he knew her better. Madison lifted the file box. If you find anything else from the station, bring it. I will. And call before coming onto the lot. I stayed on the shoulder. You did. Benjamin placed his hands in his jacket pockets. Grandpa never told me about Prairie Grid. He didn't tell me either. You found it. I did the work he left. Benjamin looked at the cabinet. You were always better at that part. What part? Staying after everyone else got bored. It wasn't an apology. It was the nearest he came to recognizing what the station required. Madison carried the box to the cottage. Benjamin drove away before she reached the door. The next afternoon, Heather delivered 2 more boxes from the farmhouse. She called first and left them on the porch because Madison was at work. Inside were old station calendars, cleaning cloths, and a spare rain gauge funnel. She had not discarded anything. Madison logged each item. 3 days later, Isaac's final report arrived. It confirmed the last storm record without qualification. Maria added it to the license file and began the activation period. The first week passed with one dropped field. The second had none. On the 12th night, Madison woke to the remote voltage alarm. The cottage clock read 2:17 in the morning. Wind pressed hard against the windows, and the kitchen light had gone out. Her first license payment was still weeks away. The roof still leaked. Luke was 40 minutes from the site, and the backup supply had not engaged. Madison pulled on William's yellow raincoat, took the flashlight, and went outside to keep the station operating. The wind caught the raincoat as soon as she left the porch. Madison held the hood closed and crossed the wet grass. The tower cups were still turning, but the cabinet display was dark. She unlocked it and aimed the flashlight inside. The main power indicator showed nothing. The backup battery remained charged, yet the transfer switch had failed to move. Madison called Luke. He answered on the fourth ring. "Voltage alarm?" he asked. "Yes, main feed is down. Backup shows charged. Transfer light? Off. Don't touch the terminals. Find the manual switch below the regulator." She found it. Move it once and hold for 2 seconds. The switch resisted. Madison pressed harder. The backup indicator turned green. The logger display came on and began its start sequence. "It's back. Check the clock." She compared the display with her phone. 2 minutes behind. "Write down the gap." "I'm coming." "You don't have to. It's an emergency call-out. You're paying me." Madison smiled despite the rain running down her neck. "Fine." She called Prairie Grid's outage number and reported the interruption. By the time Luke arrived, current readings were transmitting again. He tested the transfer switch and found moisture inside its housing. "Seal failed," he said. "You restored it correctly. Can the switch be repaired?" "I have a replacement in the truck." He changed it beneath a portable work light while Madison held the weather cover. The wind pushed cold rain against both of them. When the repair was finished, Luke tested the system 3 times. The backup engaged each time. "Your activation period shouldn't restart," he said. "The missing interval is under the limit. Maria decides." She does. Madison logged the outage, cause, response, and repair. She added Luke's invoice to the folder without complaining about the call-out rate. Before leaving, he looked through the cottage window. "You're sleeping here with no power?" The bedroom circuit came back. "And heat?" The heater restarted. He checked anyway. By 4 in the morning, the wind had eased. Madison hung William's raincoat beside the door and slept until her alarm sounded for the morning observation. Maria reviewed the outage report that afternoon. "The documentation is complete," she said. "The activation period continues." 1 week later, the station passed its 30th day. The error rate remained below Prairie Grid's limit. Maria called from her office. "The site is active under the agreement." Madison sat at William's table with the maintenance register open. "When does the first payment release?" "Today. It should reach your account within 10 business days." "And the next report?" "Due at the end of the month." Maria paused. "William trained you better than our file showed. He trained Luke." "I mostly carried tools. You stayed." Madison looked at the operating list on the wall. "Yes," she said. "I did." The first payment did not turn the cottage into a finished home. It paid the remaining authentication charge on her budget, covered the roof deposit, bought insurance, and secured Luke's service contract. Madison kept enough aside for taxes and emergencies. The roof crew arrived on a clear morning. They stripped away the 3 mismatched patches and found rotted decking near the kitchen wall. Madison stood on the ground while they showed her the damage. "Replace it," she said. The added cost hurt, but the new roof no longer leaked into a saucepan. Next came insulation around the north wall and service for the old heater. Madison replaced the warped sink cabinet herself. Luke helped lift it into place after finishing a monitor repair nearby. "You measured this opening wrong," he said. "By how much?" "Half an inch." "That's barely wrong. Close enough isn't a cabinet." She handed him the plane. Together, they made it fit. Heather called before every visit. The first time, she brought William's porch chair from the farmhouse. She had cleaned it, but not repainted it. "This was by his back door," she said. "I thought it should be here." Madison ran her hand over the worn arm. "Why?" "He used it after station checks." Heather waited at the edge of the porch until Madison moved aside. Do you want coffee? Madison asked. Yes. They sat at William's table. Heather did not ask about the next payment. Madison did not offer a license report. Instead, Heather showed her the final map from the adjacent land sale. The station boundary was marked clearly. Its entrance and service area remained separate. The buyer signed the access acknowledgement, Heather said. So the sale is done? It closes next week. I'm glad. Heather looked toward the cabinet outside. I should have brought you into the estate work sooner. I should have stepped into it sooner. That doesn't make what I did right. No. Heather wrapped both hands around the paper cup. I kept thinking if I finished everything fast enough, none of us would have to keep feeling it. Madison looked at the empty chair between them. Finishing isn't the same as settling. I know that now. It was not forgiveness. It was Heather staying in a room after the answer became uncomfortable. When she left, she stopped at the survey line and waved before crossing to her side. Benjamin took longer. He called during an autumn wind event and asked for the current speed near his north fields. Your phone app has wind, Madison said. It's using the airport. She read him the station measurement and direction. Is it rising? He asked. For the last 20 minutes. I've got a temporary cover on a grain bin. Then secure it now. He did. An hour later, he sent a message saying the cover had held. He did not call the station lucky again. Several weeks after that, Benjamin brought a metal shelf from William's machine shed. He said it had once stored gauge parts. Do you want it? He asked. Madison checked the rust along the bottom. Yes, but it stays in the workroom. You have a workroom? The back bedroom? He helped carry the shelf inside. He followed her directions without taking over, though twice she saw the effort it required. At the door, he glanced toward the station. If you ever want help with the reports, I could learn the system. I don't need a managing partner. I didn't say partner. No, you didn't. Madison gave him a copy of the public reading schedule. Start with that. He folded it into his jacket pocket. Trust returned in tasks small enough to verify. Nothing larger was promised. Luke installed the public weather display after winter began. The screen hung inside the cottage window, where drivers could read it from the gravel turnoff. A basic phone list sent high wind and freezing rain notices to nearby farms that chose to receive them. Madison handled the observations. Luke handled equipment service under the contract. When he worked late, she fed him at William's table. When she called about something she could repair herself, he told her so. During the first heavy snow, the rain gauge heater clogged with ice. Madison shut it down, cleared the drain, inspected the wiring, and returned it to service without calling him. She still logged every step. Prairie Grid accepted the monthly report. The license continued. The station record no longer ended with William's final storm. Madison's entries followed his, each tied to the same place and instruments. By spring, the cottage had a finished bedroom, safe wiring, and shelves for station parts. Madison painted the door red again. Heather brought brushes and worked on the lower panels without being asked. Benjamin repaired the loose porch board after Madison showed him which one. Neither received a key. They came when invited, and they called before arriving. The workroom became Luke's regular service stop. Farmers left faulty monitors on the porch with their names taped to the cases. Madison kept current readings posted beside the door. On storm nights, the cottage phone rang, and someone answered. The place William had kept for weather work now held clean towels, hot coffee, spare boots, and chairs that did not match. Nobody mistook it for a shed. If stories about young people rebuilding a life after family betrayal matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. One evening, after a cold front passed, Madison finished the last observation alone. She checked the gauge, locked the cabinet, and watched the anemometer settle into the steady northwest wind. Inside, soup warmed on the stove. Luke's service mug stood drying beside hers. Heather's signed boundary map rested in the file box, and Benjamin's folded public schedule had been replaced twice from use. Madison hung William's yellow raincoat on its hook. She entered the final readings, signed her name, and closed the register. A truck slowed at the turnoff. The driver checked the public display, lifted one hand in thanks, and continued toward the farms west of Dickinson. Madison shut the red door against the cold. The heater clicked on. Through the kitchen window, she could see the restored gauge holding level beneath the tower. Warm light shone in Madison's cottage window, beneath the restored weather station, turning in the North Dakota wind.